In this video, we'll show you what happened in Book 2 of A Game of Thrones compared to Season 2 of the HBO adaptation and what was left out because it was too dark. We'll use vertical footage on the right to remind you of what happened in the TV show, plus the Game of Thrones comic book so you can see for yourself why the books were actually better. We'll also show you the brilliance of Tywin Lannister, even more so than his show counterpart. So even if you are a show watcher only who has never read the books, we'll give you the real Tywin Lannister as best we can. In our last 3 videos, we summarized the first 18 comic books of A Clash of Kings, and in this video, we'll cover the next 6. We'll also summarize each chapter of A Clash of Kings, which is book 2 in the series and was pretty much just used for season 2. So stay watching. Chapter 39, Catelyn. On their way back to Riverrun, Catelyn and her men are spied by a scout of House Frey, who informs them on the ongoing war. The Blackfish is with Robb in the west, and Martin Rivers, a bastard son of Lord Walder Frey, commands the Outriders on Robb's behalf. She asks the scout where is Rivers' camp and commands to be taken to him. The scout asks for news from Bitterbridge, but she replies that she has none. She only mentions Renly's death, to which the scout says that they had hoped it to be just a Lannister's lie. The scout informs her that her brother, Lord Edmure Tully, commands in Riverrun and Robb has won a great victory at Oxcross, and Sir Stafford Lannister has been slain. This news pleases Sir Wendell Manderly, but Catelyn is neutral about it. When she finally meets Martin Rivers, he informs her that Lord Edmure has charged them to keep an eye on her party and escort her immediately to Riverrun's Hole in haste. Catelyn fears it might be for her father, but the baseborn man assures her that Lord Holster's condition has not changed. They feared she might stumble upon Lannister scouts since Lord Tywin has left Harrenhal with all of his power and is expected to be in Riverrun in 3 or 4 days. The thought discomforts her, since Stannis might be doing exactly the same. Her men wanted to hear more of Robb's victory at Oxcross, and River obliged. There's a singer come to Riverrun, calls himself Rymond the Rhymer. He's made a song of the fight. Doubtless you'll hear it sung tonight, my lady. Wolf in the night, this Rymond calls it. He went on to tell how the remnants of Sir Stafford's host had fallen back on Lannisport. Without siege engines, there was no way to storm Castle Rock, so the young wolf was paying the Lannisters back in kind for the devastation they'd inflicted on the Riverlands. Lords Karstark and Clover were raiding along the coast. Lady Mormont had captured thousands of cattle and was driving them back toward Riverrun, while the Great John had seized the gold mines at Castamere, Nuns Deep, and the Pendrick Hills. Sir Wendell laughed. Nothing's more like to bring a Lannister running than a threat to his gold. How did the king ever take the tooth? Sir Perwyn Frey asked his bastard brother. That's a hard, strong keep, and it commands the hill road. He never took it. He slipped around it in the night. It said the direwolf showed him the way. That grey wind of his. The beast sniffed out a goat track that wound down a defile and up along beneath a ridge. A crooked and stony way, yet wide enough for men riding single file. The Lannisters in their watchtowers got not so much a glimpse of them. Rivers lowered his voice. There's some say that after the battle, the king cut out Stafford Lannister's heart and fed it to the wolf. I would not believe such tales, Catelyn said sharply. My son is no savage. However, Robb Stark is already becoming a legend, the young wolf. Catelyn thinks about the day the Stark children found the pups in the late summer snows. 5 were the true-born children of House Stark, and a 6th, different from all the rest, with white fur and red eyes, for Lord Stark's baseborn son, Jon Snow. No common wolves, indeed. At that point, Brienne asked Catelyn's permission to leave, since Lady Stark is safely back with her people now. Catelyn should not have been surprised. The homely young woman had kept to herself all through their journey, spending most of her time with the horses, brushing out their coats and pulling stones from their shoes. She had helped Shad cook and clean game as well, and soon proved that she could hunt as well as any. Any task Catelyn asked her to turn her hand to, Brienne had performed deftly and without complaint. And when she was spoken to, she answered politely, but she never chatted, nor wept, nor laughed. She had ridden with them every day and slept among them every night without ever truly becoming one of them. It was the same when she was with Renly, Catelyn thought. At the feast in the Melee, even in Renly's pavilion with her brothers of the Rainbow Guard, there are walls around this one higher than Winterfell's. If you left us, where would you go? Catelyn asked her. Back, Brienne said, to Storm's End. Alone. It was not a question. The broad face was a pool of still water, giving no hint of what might live in the depths below. Yes, you mean to kill Stannis? Brienne closed her thick calloused fingers around the hilt of her sword, the sword that had been his. I swore a vow. 3 times I swore. You heard me. Catelyn has to admit that she agrees vows should be kept, but she also notices that Stannis has many guards and a great host around to keep him safe. Brienne replies that she should have never left in the first place, to which Catelyn states that Renly's death was not her fault, and it serves no one for her to die in the attempt to avenge him. I know how hard it is, Brienne shook off her hand. No one knows. You're wrong, Catelyn said sharply. Every morning when I wake, I remember that Ned is gone. I have no skill with swords, but that does not mean I do not dream of riding to King's Landing and wrapping my hands around Cersei Lannister's white throat and squeezing until her face turns black. This makes Brienne wonder why she is holding her back. Catelyn thinks it could be because of what Stannis said at the parley, but is hesitant. She was taught that good men must fight evil, and what happened to Renly was evil beyond all doubt. Brienne states that Renly was the best of them all. He is gone, Brienne, Catelyn said, as gently as she could. Stannis and Joffrey remain, and so does my son. He wouldn't. You never make a peace with Stannis, would you? Bend the knee? You wouldn't. I will tell you true, Brienne. I do not know. My son may be a king, but I am no queen. Only a mother who would keep her children safe, however she could. I am not made to be a mother. I need to fight. Then fight. But for the living, not the dead. Renly's enemies are Robb's enemies as well. Brienne stared at the ground and shuffled her feet. I do not know your son, my lady. She looked up. I could serve you, if you would have me. Catelyn was startled. Why me? The question seemed to trouble Brienne. You helped me, in the pavilion, when they thought that I had, you were innocent. Even so, you did not have to do that. You could have let them kill me. I was nothing to you. I was nothing to you. Perhaps I did not want to be the only one who knew the dark truth of what had happened there, Catelyn thought. Brienne, I have taken many well-born ladies into my service over the years, but never one like you. I am no battle commander. No, but you have courage. Not battle courage perhaps, but, I don't know, a kind of woman's courage. And I think, when the time comes, you will not try and hold me back. Promise me that you will not hold me back from Stannis. Catelyn promises that she will not hold Brienne back, remembering that Stannis threatened Robb's life too. The tall girl knelt awkwardly, unsheathed Renly's longsword and laid it at her feet. Then I am yours, my lady. I swear it by the old gods and the new. And I vow that you shall always have a place by my hearth and pledge to ask no service of you that might bring you into dishonor. Arise. As she clasped the other woman's hand between her own, Catelyn could not help but smile. How many times did I watch Ned accept a man's oath of service? She wondered what he would think if he could see her now. The next day they reach Riverrun, and Catelyn realizes that Edmure intends to fight there. Small folk cheer them on as they get into the castle. A camp of bannermen is set on the north bank of the Tumblestone. Piper, Dari, pages, and others. If Edmure called them back, it really means that he intends to battle Lord Tywin there. On the walls of the castle, there are dead men hung, and even though the crows are eating their corpses, the red cloaks show clearly their Lannister allegiance. This makes Catelyn fear that they might have killed Jaime Lannister as well, and if so, her daughters would be dead as well. Her brother Edmure rides out of the castle to meet her accompanied by the steward Wayne, the captain of the guards Sir Robin Ryger, and the master-at-arms Sir Desmond Grell. Catelyn immediately asks about their father's health, to which Edmure replies that he asked for her. I will go to him soon, she vowed. Has there been word from Storm's End since Renly died, or from Bitterbridge? No ravens came to men on the road, and Catelyn was anxious to know what happened behind her. Nothing from Bitterbridge. From Storm's End, 3 birds from the Castellan, Sir Courtney Penrose, all carrying the same plea. Stannis has him surrounded by land and sea. He offers his allegiance to whatever king will break the siege. He fears for the boy, he says. What boy would that be, do you know? Edric Storm, Brienne told them, Robert's bastard son. Edmure looked at her curiously. Stannis has sworn that the garrison might go free, unharmed, provided they yield the castle within the fortnight and deliver the boy into his hands. But Sir Courtney will not consent. He risks all for a base-born boy whose blood is not even his own, Catelyn thought. Did you send him an answer? Edmure shook his head. Why? When we have neither help nor hope to offer, and Stannis is no enemy of ours. So Robin Rhaegar spoke. My lady, can you tell us the manner of Lord Renly's death? The tales we've heard have been queer. Cat, her brother said. Some say you killed Renly. Others claim it was some southern woman. His glance lingered on Brienne. My king was murdered, the girl said quietly, and not by Lady Catelyn. I swear it on my sword. Catelyn then introduces Lady Brienne to the others and states that neither of them had a part in Renly's death, but no more. She does not dare to speak of the shadow there and in front of those men. She asks about the hanged men, and they tell her that those are false envoys who took advantage of Edmure's hospitality to free the Kingslayer. They almost succeeded, as the Kingslayer managed to slay 2 men and wound another one badly before being put in chains again. Now he's guarded in the dungeon, and so is his cousin Cleos Frey, who came as an envoy himself. They don't know whether he was aware of the plot, as he pledges to be innocent, so Edmure put him in Jaime's old tower cell. To Wayne's question whether to expect aid from Stannis against Lord Tywin, Catelyn simply thinks that Stannis has made common cause with a greater and darker power. She then notices that inside the castle walls there are hundreds of common people who would be nothing more than useless mouths in case of siege. When questioned about it, Edmure replies that they are his people and that they were afraid. Catelyn loves her brother for his soft heart, so she questions him about his battle plans. You do not have the strength to meet the Lannisters in the field, she said bluntly. When all my strength is marshalled, I should have 8,000 foot and 3,000 horse, Edmure said, which means Lord Tywin will have near twice your numbers. Robb's won battles against worse odds, Edmure replied, and I have a plan. You've forgotten Roose Bolton. Lord Tywin defeated him on the Green Fork, but failed to pursue. When Lord Tywin went to Harrenhal, Bolton took the Ruby Ford and the Crossroads. He has 10,000 men. I've sent word to Helman Tallet to join him with the garrison Robb left at the Twins. Edmure, Robb left those men to hold the Twins and make certain Lord Walter keeps faith with us. He has, Edmure said stubbornly. The Freys fought bravely in the Whispering Wood, and old Sir Steffron died at Oxcross, we hear. Sir Ryman and Black Walder and the rest are with Robb in the west. Martin has been of great service scouting, and Sir Perwyn helped see you safe to Renly. Gods be good, how much more can we ask of them? Robb's betrothed to one of Lord Walder's daughters, and Roose Bolton wed another, I hear. And haven't you taken 2 of his grandsons to be fostered at Winterfell? A ward can easily become a hostage if need be. She had not known that Sir Steffron was dead, nor of Bolton's marriage. If we're 2 hostages to the good, all the more reason Lord Walder dare not play us false. Bolton needs Frey's men, and Sir Helmsman's as well. I've commanded him to retake Harrenhal. That's like to be a bloody business. Yes, but once the castle falls, Lord Tywin will have no safe retreat. My own levies will defend the fords of Red Fork against his crossing. If he attacks across the river, he'll end as Rhaegar did when he tried to cross the Trident. If he holds back, he'll be caught between River Run and Harrenhal, and when Robb returns from the west, we can finish him for good and all. Catelyn states that she really hopes for the plan to succeed and leaves Edmure to be at their father's side. Lord Hoster's health is as bad as when she left him. He does not think clearly. He thinks Catelyn is her younger sister, Lysa, and that they are not married yet. He is asking for her forgiveness. It was best, her father whispered. Jon's a good man. Good. Strong. Kind. Take care of you. He will. And well-born. Listen to me. You must. I am your father. Your father. You'll wed when Cat does. Yes, you will. He thinks I'm Lysa, Catelyn realized. Gods be good. He talks as if we were not married yet. Her father's hands clutched at hers, fluttering like 2 frightened white birds. That stripling, wretched boy, not speak that name to me. Your duty, your mother. She would. Lord Hoster cried as a spasm of pain washed over him. Oh gods forgive me. Forgive me, my medicine." Maester Wyman gives him milk of the poppy and Lord Holster falls asleep. His word makes little to no sense to Cat, who agrees to send a rider to Blackfish since Lord Holster's end is close. The Maester suggests to send a word to Lysa too, but Catelyn knows that she won't come. She will send a raven anyway, just to please the Maester. The lady goes to her chambers, but she finds Euthyrus and the Silent Sisters in front of the door, waiting for her. She immediately orders to be brought to her husband, who was covered with a banner, white with the grey direwolf sigil. She orders to show him to her, even though only the bones remain. Bones, Catelyn thought. This is not Ned. This is not the man I loved, the father of my children. His hands were clasped together over his chest. Skeletal fingers curled around the hilt of some longsword. Catelyn turned away. That is not his sword. Ice was not returned to us, my lady, Euthyrdeus said. Only Lord Eddard's bones. I suppose I must thank the Queen for even that much. Thank the imp, my lady. It was all his doing. One day I will thank them all. Catelyn gives them another task, to bring the remaining of Lord Eddard Stark to Winterfell, where a statue built in his likeness will sit forever in the crypts, a direwolf at his feet and a sword on his knees to keep his soul inside. She then asked to be left alone with her husband for the night, envying the Silent Sisters for the supposed ability to talk with the dead. So this chapter demonstrates the moment Robb Stark lost the war, because had Edmure Tully just allowed Tywin to cross back into the Westerlands unopposed, he would have been too far away for the Tyrell Outriders to reach him in order to secure an alliance with the Reach, and thereby arriving in time to destroy Stannis Baratheon at the Blackwater. However, at the same time, Edmure's plan was a solid one, with Bruce taking Harrenhal after Tywin's departure, and would have worked if not for Littlefinger's brilliant diplomatic skills. So Tywin was very lucky, but this was just him reaping the benefits of his sound strategy planning by placing himself at Harrenhal to fend off 4 threats at once and only committing when he absolutely had to, since his patience sitting at Harrenhal allowed Stannis to destroy Renly and the Ironborn to attack the Starks. Davos has returned after delivering Stannis' message through the realm. For 8 days he has tried to get an audience with Stannis, but this is the first time he gets to be close to him. Davos has learnt through his son Devon, squire to the king, that terrible nightmares are plaguing Stannis, and that only Lady Melisandre is able to soothe him to sleep. Davos wonders what kind of methods she uses to help the king, and if that is the reason why she shares the pavilion with him now, but dares not to share his thoughts with the king. Stannis seems years older than when Davos left Dragonstone. Now, under the walls of Storm's End, Sir Courtney Penrose, the Castellan of House Baratheon's ancient seat, has arrived to parley with Stannis. Sir Penrose doesn't address Stannis as Your Grace, and mocks his newfound allies who just a few days prior were his enemies, sworn to Renly Baratheon. Now that Renly is dead, the majority of them has chosen Stannis, but not all. He knows every new ally of Stannis, even Davos himself, the Onion Knight, but has no idea of who Melisandre is. The negotiations don't go well. You know full well why we are here, said Stannis. You have had a fortnight to consider my offer. You sent your ravens, no help has come, nor will it. Storm's End stands alone, and I am out of patience. One last time, sir, I command you to open your gates and deliver me that which is mine by rights. And the terms, asked Sir Courtney. Remain as before, said Stannis. I will pardon you for your treason, as I have pardoned these lords you see behind me. The men of your garrison will be free to enter my service or return unmolested to their homes. You may keep your weapons and as much property as a man can carry. I will require your horses and pack animals, however. And what of Edric Storm? My brother's bastard must be surrendered to me. Then my answer is still no, my lord. The king clenched his jaw. He said nothing. Melisandre spoke instead. May the Lord of Light protect you in your darkness, Sir Courtney. May the others bugger your Lord of Light, Penrose spat back, and wipe his ass with that rag you bear. Lord Alistair Florent cleared his throat. Sir Courtney, mind your tongue. His grace means the boy no harm. The child is his own blood, and mine as well. My niece Delena was the mother, as all men know. If you will not trust to the king, trust to me. You know me for a man of honour. I know you for a man of ambition, Sir Courtney broke in. a man who changes kings and gods the way I change my boots, as do these other turncloaks I see before me." Sir Penrose goes on questioning on who was responsible for Renly's death. Some accuse Lady Catelyn Stark, some Brienne of Tarth. Much to Penrose's disbelief, who knows Brienne since infancy and is aware of the fact that she was in love with Renly. But Stannis interrupts everyone, stating that it doesn't matter who did the deed. The Lord of Light decided to have Renly killed for treason. So Courtney Penrose has his counter-offer: single combat by sword, spear, or any other weapon of Stannis' choice. Stannis refuses because he's going to win with the strength of his army anyway, and so Courtney rides back to Storm's End. Stannis then dismisses all of his men but Melisandre and Davos, having the Onion Knight ride with him. The king asks the smuggler what he thinks of Sir Courtney, and Davos warily replies that they are dealing with a stubborn man who keeps his oath where others don't. Stannis tells him that Lord Florent would have Lord Penrose hung by Storm's End to convince Sir Penrose to surrender. Even though it's not wise to go against the Queen's men, Davos states that it would bring nothing good to their cause, only dishonor. So Penrose keeps faith, but the King's men, once Robert's men, then Renly's, and who's next, do not. Stannis laughs and says he has missed Davos. He then goes on telling what he really thinks about his new bannermen. They're different from the good men who fight for Joffrey, believing him the rightful heir, and from the Northerners who follow Robb Stark because they already knew that Renly, being the last of the Baratheon brothers, was not Robert's true heir. Therefore, by proclaiming for him, they chose to become traitors. He has forgiven them because he has to, but he is not forgotten. Davos refers him the rumours from King's Landing that Princess Shireen is not his but Patchface's, but Stannis scolds them and asks him about how the small folk reacted to Renly's death, revealing a hidden and regretful side of him to Davos. "You cannot stop them talking, my liege," Davos said, "but when you take your vengeance on your brother's true killers, the realm will know such tales for lies." Stannis only seemed to half hear him. "I have no doubt that Cersei had a hand in Robert's death. I will have justice for him. Aye, and for Ned Stark, and Jon Arryn as well. And for Renly?" The words were out before Davos could stop to consider them. For a long time the king did not speak. Then, very softly he said, "I dream of it sometimes, of Renly's dying. A green tent, candles, a woman screaming, and blood." Stannis looked down at his hands. "I was still abed when he died. Your Devon will tell you. He tried to wake me. Dawn was nigh, and my lords were waiting, fretting. I should have been a horse, armed. I knew Renly would attack at break of day. Devon says I thrashed and cried out. But what does it matter? It was a dream. I was in my tent when Renly died, and when I woke, my hands were clean." So Davos Seaworth could feel his phantom fingertips start to itch. Something is wrong here, the one-time smuggler thought. Yet he nodded and said, "I see. Renly offered me a peach at our parley, mocked me, defied me, threatened me, and offered me a peach. I thought he was drawing a blade and went for mine own. Was that his purpose, to make me show fear? Or was it one of his pointless jests? When he spoke of how sweet the peach was, did his words have some hidden meaning?" The king gave a shake of his head, like a dog shaking a rabbit to snap its neck. "Only Renly could vex me so with a piece of fruit. He brought his doom on himself with his treason. But I did love him, Davos. I know that now. I swear, I will go to my grave thinking of my brother's peach." They ride back to the King's Pavilion, where Stannis complains about having to attend council meetings and promises Davos that one day he'll make him lord. The Onion Knight asks why to attend them if they're useless, and the king replies that sometimes a good advice comes up. The king then asks for his advice, to which Davos' reply is quick and straightforward. Storm King's Landing at once. The Lannisters can harm him, so Penrose in Storm's End can't. Stannis' counter-argument is that nobody follows him for love, only out of fear, and defeat is the death of fear. He'll give the command of Storm's End to Sir Courtney's lieutenant, a cousin of the Fossaways, the young Lord Meadows. Stannis then claims that Sir Penrose will be dead before the new day comes, because Melisandre saw it in her flames, just as she saw Renly's death. Davos stutters. He does not understand. "I do not require your understanding, only your service. Sir Courtney will be dead within a day. Melisandre has seen it in the flames of the future." his death and the manner of it. He will not die in knightly combat, needless to say. Stannis held up his cup, and Devon filled it again from the flagon. Her flames do not lie. She saw Renly's doom as well. On Dragonstone she saw it, and told Selyse, Lord Valerion and your friend Salladhor Saan would have had me sail against Joffrey, but Melisandre told me that if I went to Storm's End, I would win the best part of my brother's power, and she was right. But, Davos stammered, Lord Renly only came here because you had laid siege to the castle. He was marching towards King's Landing before, against the Lannisters. He would have... Stannis shifted in his seat, frowning. Would have. What is that? He did what he did. He came here with the banners and his peaches to his doom, and it was well for me he did. Melisandre saw another day in her flames as well, a morrow where Renly rode out of the south in his green armor to smash my host beneath the walls of King's Landing. Had I met my brother there, it might have been me who died in place of him, or you might have joined your strength to his to bring down the Lannisters, Davos protested. Why not that? If she saw two futures, well, both cannot be true. King Stannis pointed a finger. There you are, Onion Knight. Some lights cast more than one shadow. Stand before the night fire and you'll see for yourself. The flames shift and dance, never still. The shadows grow tall and short, and every man casts a dozen. Some are fainter than others, that's all. Well, men cast their shadows across the future as well. One shadow or many. Melisandre sees them all. He then adds that he must have Robert's bastard, because Melisandre saw that in the flames as well. Davos understands his orders clearly. He has to smuggle something by boat with the cover of dark. 15 years before, Davos thinks, he had smuggled life in the shapes of onions. Now, to make her visions in the flames come true, he's smuggling death in the shape of Melisandre of Asshai. When on the boat, the Red Woman asks him whether he's a good man or an evil man, to which Davos replies that he considers himself and the majority of men to be both good and evil. Melisandre states that if half an onion is rotten, then the whole onion is bad, and so are men. As they pass through the tight passage that leads to the inside of Storm's End, Davos asks her whether she's good or evil. Good, replies Melisandre with no hesitation. She considers herself a sort of knight. Davos accuses her of having murdered both Maester Cressen and Renly, and Melisandre claims her innocence. Maester Cressen had meant to poison her and ended up poisoning himself, and of Renly, it was not her who murdered him. Davos doesn't believe her. He asks her who had rowed her to Renly like he is rowing her to Sir Courtenay now, and she says that there was no need. Renly was not protected in the camp, but Storm's End is another thing entirely. An ancient seat, with spells woven into his stones that no shadow can pass. Davos says that the shadows are a thing of darkness, which makes Melisandre laugh at his ignorance. Shadows are the children of fire, therefore good, not evil. Once Davos starts the boat, Melisandre makes sure to pass the castle walls. They have, Davos assures her, and then assists to the most horrific thing of his life. Melisandre strips naked, heavy with child. As she prepares to give birth, black blood runs down her thighs, and her screams could be of ecstasy or pain or both. The black head of a shadow emerges from her, then black hands, then the entire figure. Davos is petrified with terror. He knows that shadow, and he knows the man that cast it. So, again, this shadow baby is probably Stannis, since the man that cast it is someone Davos knows, and Stannis has king's blood. Stannis also appears years older as Davos describes him, and later we see Stannis' health seriously decline. The show also tells us that in Season 3, which George was a part of, it is probably canon. There is a cool theory that Courtenay Penrose was killed by one of his own men and not the shadow baby, and this is just Melisandre taking credit for his death. However, it was meant to turn Davos into a firm believer in the Red God. It seems to have had the opposite effect. Chapter 43. In the dead of night, Jon Snow and his companions in the Night Watch startle awake by the distant sound of a horn. The camp springs into action, everyone on edge, anticipating potential danger. After a tense moment of silence, it becomes evident that no further threat looms. Jon and the others relax somewhat, though remain wary. Jon prepares for whatever may come next, while Mormont emerges from his tent. Also curious about this singular blast, their tension dissipates, but the night remains uneasy. Mormont approaches the fire, stating, "The half-hand, and past time." His growing impatience is palpable. "Ensure there's hot food for the men and fodder for the horses. I'll speak with Qhorin immediately." The delayed arrival of the men from the Shadow Tower raises anxiety within the Night's Watch. Different viewpoints emerge among the brothers. Some propose retreating to Castle Black. Others suggest searching for Qhorin Halfhand at the Shadow Tower. And a faction propose a bold move into the mountains for a surprise attack on Mance Rayder's forces. Debates ensue regarding the likelihood of success against Raydar's significant army and the associated risks. "I know them as well as you do, Buckwell," Theon Smallwood reported sharply, "and I mean to have their heads. Every one. These are wildlings, no soldiers. We will sweep over them and send them howling back to their hovels." After lengthy debates, the Night's Watch leadership fails to reach a consensus. While the Old Bear opposes retreating, he's cautious about rushing into battle. They opt to await reinforcements from the Shadow Tower before deciding. Upon the arrival of the Shadow Tower men, Jon notices their worn appearance, suggesting challenges during their journey. Jon identifies Qhorin Halfhand, a respected figure in the Night's Watch, known for his composed manner and resolute decisions. Despite his rugged appearance, he radiates authority and vigor. Qhorin's missing fingers mean that he had to train to learn to use his opposite hand, but he is still incredibly dangerous. Jon calls to him, "Lord Commander Mormont would see you at once. I'll show you to his tent." Qhorin swings down from his saddle. "My men are hungry, and our horses require tending. They'll all be seen to." The ranger gives his horse into the care of one of his men and follows. "You are Jon Snow. You have your father's look. Did you know him, my lord?" "I am no lordling, only a brother of the Night's Watch. I know Lord Eddard, yes, and his father before him." Jon rushes to match Qhorin's pace as they discuss Jon's father, Lord Rickard, and his Night's Watch connections. Qhorin mentions rumours of Jon's direwolf Ghost, who hunts at night. Finding Dolores Edd cooking breakfast with Mormont nearby, Qhorin reports encountering Alfin Crowkiller, resulting in casualties. Mormont invites them inside for further discussion, offering refreshments. Qhorin opts for boiled water, an egg, and bacon. As they enter the tent, Edd humorously expresses his desire for warmth and alcohol, recounting a tale of a brother drowning in wine. Jon, restless, listens to the discussions inside the tent, unable to discern the words. Despite the victory over Alfin Crowkiller, a notorious wildling raider, Jon senses Qhorin's somberness. He had hoped the arrival of men from the Shadow Tower would lift spirits, but overhears Chet and others expressing doubts about their mission. Lark the Systerman states, "There are giants in the Frostfangs, and wargs, and worse things. I'm not going there, I promise you." "The Old Bear probably won't give you a choice," Chet replied. "Maybe we won't give him one." Despite considering reporting the conversation to Mormont, Jon refrains, dismissing it as mere fearful chatter. Perched above the forest, Jon ponders the fear of unseen enemies and examines his dragonglass dagger, reflecting on its significance and burial mystery. Having crafted daggers for Gren and Mormont and distributed items to his friends, Jon notices Mormont's preference for a steel knife. Eager to hear the discussion, Jon decides to serve the food Edd prepares for the meeting. Qhorin sits cross-legged, his posture rigid as he speaks by candlelight. He mentions Rattleshirt and other chiefs, along with their wargs and mammoths, emphasizing the strength of their forces, though he doubts the truth of their claims. Mormont stresses the importance of warning the Wall and all the kings, regardless of legitimacy. Qhorin suggests Winterfell as the best hope, urging the Starks to rally the north. Mormont examines maps, contemplating where the enemy might strike. With only 3 garrisoned castles along the Wall, they discuss the need to reinforce Greyguard and other locations. They plan daily patrols and discuss the Wall's role as a barrier. They speculate on Mance's strategy, considering the logistical challenges his army faces in breaching the Wall. A breach. Mormont's attention sharpens. "What do you mean?" "They don't intend to climb or tunnel beneath the Wall, my lord. They plan to destroy it." The wall is 700 feet tall, and so thick that it will take 100 men a year to cut through it with picks and axes. Nevertheless, Mormont strokes his beard, deep in thought. How? How else? Sorcery, Qhorin says, biting into the egg. Why else would Mance gather his strength in the Frostfangs? They're harsh and remote, far from the wall. Qhorin reveals his suspicion that Mance Rayder seeks something of power in the mountains, despite Mormont's hope that he was merely hiding his forces. They discuss the necessity of sending scouts into the mountains to gather intelligence, despite the risks involved. Qhorin proposes leading 3 groups of 5 men each to explore different routes. Mormont reluctantly agrees, acknowledging the potential danger but seeing no other choice. Qhorin selects Jon Snow as one of the scouts, despite Mormont's reservations about his youth and duties as a steward. Jon eagerly accepts the opportunity to go. Despite the somber atmosphere, Jon and Qhorin emerge from the tent at dawn, ready to face the challenges ahead. The journey begins at noon, the ranger informed him. You'd better locate your wolf by then. So, Jon overhears the first planned mutiny against Jeor Mormont by Chet and the other conspirators of the Night's Watch in the prologue chapter of A Storm of Swords. However, because of the attack by the others, this mutiny gets delayed until Craster's Keep. Also, we believe Qhorin Halfhand is Oswell Went, along with Mance Rayder being Sir Arthur Dayne and Tormund Giantsbane being Gerald Hightower. We won't go into all the evidence here, since we'll talk about this more in A Storm of Swords, but here's the first mention of it. Chapter 44. In a secret meeting in the Sept, Lancel reveals to Tyrion that Cersei intends to send Tommen away to protect him because she fears both the mob and the imp. The plan is to darken his hair and claim that he is the son of a hedge knight, disguising him as a page. Tyrion is worried about the fact that Varys hasn't warned him about his sister's plot, and he wonders if it is because he didn't know or didn't want to tell. Lancel asks him to reward him with the command of the troops in the upcoming battle, to which Tyrion replies, perhaps. Tyrion then lights a candle to the warrior, praying him to watch over his brother, and lights another one to the stranger for himself. Later in the night, safe in the Red Keep, Tyrion sends Bronn to deliver a letter to Sir Jacelyn Bywaters. The letter says to take 50 of his best men and scout the Rose Road. According to Bronn, Stannis is more likely to come up the King's Road, to which Tyrion agrees and instructs the sellsword to make Sir Jacelyn disregard what is written in the letter to follow his instructions. Sir Jacelyn is to take his men north to set a trap along the Roseby Road. Lord Giles is supposed to depart from the capital in a couple of days, with a disguised Tommen with him. Since the Lord is too sickly to run and too craven to fight, he will surrender the castle. Sir Jacelyn has to expel the garrison, keep Tommen safe, and keep Lord Giles alive. If it comes to killing, an execution should not happen in front of Tommen. Tyrion wants to shield him from the cruelty of the world as long as possible, and oddly enough, agrees with Cersei that to take the boy away from King's Landing is a good plan. If Stannis seizes the city and executes Joffrey, the Lannisters will still have a claim over the Iron Throne. Bronn states that if the prize is lordship, he'll take care of the boy himself, but Tyrion refuses, because he knows that Sir Jacelyn's men will defend Tommen until the end, whereas Bronn's men's loyalty are more likely to sell Tommen to the highest bidder. They then head to the city and part ways at the Mud Gates. Tyrion sets out for Chataea's brothel, but loses patience and heads directly to Shay's mansion, near the Iron Gate. He finds Shay listening to a singer whose name is Simon Silvertongue. Tyrion is annoyed by his presence and kicks him away, having him swear silence on his presence there. After making love with Shay, Tyrion goes down to the garden of the mansion, marveling at its tranquility. He wonders how long it will last before Shay comes alongside a disguised Varys. Lord Varys has come to see you, Shay announced. The begging brother blinked at her, astonished. Tyrion laughed. To be sure, how is it you knew him when I did not? She shrugged. It's still him, only dressed different. A different look, a different smell, a different way of talking, said Tyrion. Most men would be deceived. And most women maybe, but not whores. A whore learns to see the man, not his garb, or she turns up dead in an alley. Varys brings terrible news for the Lannisters. Tyrion fears for Jaime's life, but the spider informs the imp of Storm's End's fall. Sir Corny Penrose is dead, and now Stannis is marching towards the capital. Before explaining how it was possible to Tyrion, Varys suggests that it might be better for Shae not to hear it. He tells Tyrion he'll wait for him in the stables and goes. Tyrion tells Shae that she's not safe there. "I have my walls, and the guards you gave me. Sellswords," Tyrion said. "They like my gold well enough, but will they die for it? As for these walls, a man could stand on another's shoulders and be over in a heartbeat." A man's much like this one was burned during the riots. They killed the goldsmith who owned it for the crime of having a full larder, just as they tore the High Septon to pieces, kicked lollies 100 times, and smashed Sir Aaron's skull in. What do you think they would do if they got their hands on the Hand's lady? The Hand's whore, you mean? She looked at him with those big bold eyes of her. "Though I would be your lady, my lord. I dress in all the beautiful things you gave me, in satin and samite and cloth of gold, and I'd wear your jewels and hold your hand and sit by you at feasts. I could give you sons, I know I could, and I vow I'd never shame you." "My love for you shames me enough. A sweet dream, Shae. Now put it aside, I beg you. It can never be. Because of the Queen? I'm not afraid of her either." "I am. Then kill her and be done with it. It's not as if there was any love between you." Tyrion sighed. "She's my sister. The man who kills his own blood is cursed forever in the sight of gods and men. Moreover, whatever you and I may think of Cersei, my father and brother hold her dear. I can scheme with any man in the Seven Kingdoms, but the gods have not equipped me to face Jaime with swords in hand." He then proceeds to tell her his plan. He intends to smuggle her in the kitchens and disguise her as a pot girl. Shae is reluctant to the idea that she mocks him for his fear of his father, who has expressly forbidden him from taking her to court. The mockery hits a nerve on Tyrion that slaps her and commands her to never ever mock him again. He is regretful for the act, and Shae, because of the immense power imbalance between the two, apologizes even if it was him to wrong her and not the other way around. So Tyrion, feeling guilty and the necessity to explain, tells her of what Tywin has done to Tysha, his first wife, and how he intends to do anything in his power to avoid it happening again to Shae. Finally, she agrees to the plan, and Tyrion leaves for the stables where Varys awaits for him. Tyrion informs him of his plan to have Shae work in the kitchen, but Varys suggests a safer plan, to have her work as a maid for Lolly Stokeworth, where she'd be more out of sight but still conveniently close. Varys then talks about Sir Penrose's death, which appears to be suicide by throwing himself down a tower. Nobody, Tyrion included, believes it to be true. Then Varys suggests that it was magic, and then tells him the story of how he was cut as a boy to explain why he believed so. "I was an orphan boy, apprenticed to a travelling folly. Our master owned a fat little cog, and we sailed up and down the narrow sea, performing in all the free cities and from time to time in Old Town and King's Landing. One day at Mere, a certain man came to our folly. After the performance, he made an offer for me that my master found too tempting to refuse. I was in terror. I feared the man meant to use me as I had heard men use small boys. But in truth, the only part of me he needed was my manhood. He gave me a potion that made me powerless to move or speak, yet did nothing to dull my senses. With a long hooked blade, he sliced me, root and stem, chanting all the while. I watched him burn my manly parts on a brazier. The flames turned blue, and I heard a voice answer his call, though I did not understand the words they spoke. The murmurs had sailed by the time he was done with me. Once I had served his purpose, the man had no further interest in me, so he put me out. When I asked him what I should do now, he answered that he supposed I should die. To spite him, I resolved to live. I begged, I stole, and I sold what parts of my body still remained to me. Soon I was as good a thief as any in Mere, and when I was older, I learned that often the contents of a man's letters are more valuable than the contents of his purse. Yet I still dream of that night, my lord. I dream of the voice from the flames. Was it a god, a demon, some conjurer's trick? I could not tell you, and I know all the tricks. All I can say for certain is that he called it, and it answered. And since that day I have hated magic and all those who practice it. If Lord Stannis is one such, I mean to see him dead." Tyrion listens in astonished silence, but it's clear that he still doesn't believe it to be magic. He suggests that it could have been assassins from the Free Cities. The situation for the city isn't the best now. Stannis is marching towards them with his army and who knows what dark powers, and there's no one to defend the city but the imp, the person that the entire King's Landing hates the most. The thought makes him laugh, amused by the irony. So the theory goes that Varys is a Targaryen, and this is why the man cut off his manhood to get some of his king's blood. However, this story is probably a fabrication with just nuggets of truth, since we hear Varys have a deep voice in A Dance with Dragons, which suggests his manhood was never cut off. Instead, someone probably did purchase Varys, and maybe he did hear the voices, but with Varys and Illyroy, it's impossible to know if anything they tell us is true. Sadly, Tyrion taking Tommen will lead to the deterioration of Cersei and Tyrion's relationship, which was both unnecessary and tragic. Chapter 45. Duty is Catelyn's constant thought in her time at Riverrun. As she bids good luck to her brother Edmure, who is going to fight off some Lannisters on the Red Fork, she can't help but think about how men and women have different duties, yet equally demanding. Brienne shares her misery, as she'd rather ride off to battle with Edmure and his men than stay inside the castle walls and wait, feeling that kind of hopelessness. At this point, Brienne feels so low to ask Catelyn what are they supposed to do now, to which the lady simply replies, "Our duty." Catelyn reflects on her life and how she's always been dutiful. When she was a child, since her two older brothers hadn't survived infancy, she had been both a son and a daughter to her father, until the birth of her little brother, Edmure. When her father had promised her in marriage to Brandon Stark, she had thanked him for the splendid match, and when Peter had fought for her hand in combat, she did not grant him her favour, nor paid him a visit when injured, or said goodbye to him when he was sent off. Even when Brandon had died and her father had told her that she was to marry Eddard Stark, she did so. And when his duty led her away from her and in the arms of his secret love, she had dutifully waited in Riverrun, pregnant with Robb, their firstborn child. Duty had been unkind to her, yet she kept on upholding it even when it hurt her. She seeks comfort in the Sept, praying the warrior to keep safe her brother, son, and their men, but nothing brings her any kind of comfort. They listen to a singer, Rymond the Rhymer, singing of war, and Catelyn wonders why boys love so much to play war when knights die in battle. Brienne explains that you never feel helpless when in battle, because when you have a sword or an axe in your hand and a horse to ride, there's always hope. Something you could do. Then she adds that women die in childbed too, but nobody sings about their courage. Children are a battle of a different sort, Catelyn started across the yard. A battle without banners or war horns, but no less fierce. Carrying a child, bringing it into the world, your mother will have told you of the pain. I never knew my mother, Brienne said. My father had ladies, a different lady every year, but those were no ladies, Catelyn said. As hard as birth can be, Brienne, what comes after is even harder. At times I feel as though I am being torn apart. Would that there were 5 of me, 1 for each child, so I might keep them all safe. And who would keep you safe, my lady? Her smile was wan and tired. Why, the men of my house, or so my lady mother taught me. My lord father, my brother, my uncle, my husband, they will keep me safe. But while they are away from me, I suppose you must fill their place, Brienne. Brienne bowed her head. I shall try, my lady. Later, Maester Vyman brings her a letter from Storm's End, declaring that the castle was taken with no casualties, but makes no mention of Edric Storm, Robert's bastard son. Catelyn can't help but think about the men's attitude towards their bastards. Some give their life for them, like Sir Courtney Penrose had, even though the boy Edric Storm wasn't even his, and bring them in their household, like Ned did. Catelyn wonders whether Jon's mother prays for her son like she does for hers, if she's saddened by Ned's death or curses him for taking her child away. But for every man who cares and loves their bastard children, there are others who care little and less about their lives, like Lord Bolton, who wrote in a chilling letter that he was glad of his bastard's death. According to him, his true-born sons would have never been safe while he was alive. She understands the reason why Stannis wants the Storm Boy. to prove his likeliness to Robert, with his black hair and blue eyes, so similar to Renly, who favoured Robert, in opposition to Joffrey, who was more Cersei than Robert. To Stannis' support, these physical features will mean everything. To the opposers, they will mean nothing. Catelyn's children themselves are more Tully in appearance than Stark, except for Arya and Jon, who was never hers. Her thoughts are interrupted by Sir Desmond Squire, who warns her of a Lannister attack on the Red Fork. The purple unicorn under the golden lion represents House Brax. Once Lord Brax has come to propose a marriage between one of his sons to either her or Lysa, and Catelyn wonders whether now one of those very sons is there charging against them. Catelyn assists to the battle from the Watchtower, where Lannister troops are repelled every time they try to cross the river. She's unimpressed by the victory, even though she can't really tell why. Again, past midnight, the Lannisters try to cross the Red Fork, and again they're defeated. Still unhappy with the matter, Catelyn orders to serve wine to Sir Cleos Frey in the dungeon to have answers from his. The wine might make his tongue looser. When she goes in his cell to question him, Sir Cleos is uneasy on his feet for the wine. "My lady, I knew naught of any escape. The imp said a Lannister must needs have a Lannister escort, on my oath. As a knight." "Arise, sir," Catelyn seated herself. "I know no grandson of Walder Frey would be an oathbreaker, unless it served his purpose. You brought peace terms, my brother said." "I did." Sir Cleos lurched to his feet. She was pleased to see how unsteady he was. "Tell me," she commanded, and he did. When he was done, Catelyn sat frowning. Edmure had been right. These were no terms at all, except Lannister will exchange Arya and Sansa for his brother. Yes, he sat on the Iron Throne and swore it. Before witnesses, before all the court, my lady, and the gods as well. I said as much to Sir Edmure, but he told me it was not possible, that his Grace Robb would never consent. He told you true. She could not even say that Robb was wrong. Arya and Sansa were children. The Kingslayer, alive and free, was as dangerous as any man in the realm. That road led nowhere. Did you see my girls? Are they treated well? Sir Cleos hesitated. Yes, they seemed... He is fumbling for a lie, Catelyn realized, but the wine has fuddled his wits. Sir Cleos, she said coolly, you forfeited the protection of your peace banner when your men played us false. Lie to me, and you'll hang from the walls beside them. Believe that. I shall ask you once more, did you see my daughters? His brow was damp with sweat. I saw Sansa at the court, the day Tyrion told me his terms. She looked most beautiful, my lady. Perhaps a bit wan, drawn as it were. Sansa, but not Arya. That might mean anything. Arya had always been harder to tame. Perhaps Cersei was reluctant to parade her in open court for fear of what she might say or do. They might have her locked safely out of sight. Or they might have killed her. Catelyn shoved the thought away. His terms, you said. Yet Cersei is Queen Regent. Tyrion spoke for both of them. The Queen was not there. She was indisposed that day, I was told. Curious. Catelyn wishes too hard to trust his word, but finds herself unable to. So she leaves the cell and Sir Cleos to his wine. Later that night, she gets a letter with good news. Another great victory for the Tullys. Lord Leo Leffold has drowned, Sir Gregor Clegane is severely wounded, and the great knight Strongbow has been taken captive. They will not cross. Yet Catelyn can't help to doubt. She looks at the maps in her father's solar, looking for answers. The gods have granted them victory after victory, yet she can't help but feel terrified still. So, the dread Catelyn feels comes from the fact that even though Tywin Lannister lost this battle and would subsequently lose Harrenhal with no safe refuge to retreat to, he has inadvertently won the war, since the Tyrell and Littlefinger scouts will reach him soon and allow a combined Tyrell Lannister force to descend upon Stannis when he least suspects it. Strongbow, who got captured this chapter, also travels with Jaime in a feast for crows during his Riverlands adventures. This chapter also foreshadows Catelyn releasing Jaime after talking with Cleos Frey. Chapter 46. Bran is walking into summer and can feel something is wrong. Thanks to the rain, Summer can smell every scent in the Godswood, from the blackberries to rotting leaves, from the fear of the squirrels to the blood of the one that his brother Shaggy Dog has killed. Summer can smell another scent, the faintest of smells, yet it's there and it does not belong to any man that he knows. And the sound, clink, clink, like some kind of metal thing against the stone. The men are inside the stone house because it's dark, and even if it's not raining anymore, the garden is damp and men prefer the heat of the fire in their houses. Yet his brother too feels something. Summer and Shaggy Dog howl to wake the men, but the castle, it's too big for the wind to carry their voices. Yet danger is close. Their senses are awake. The wolves try to escape, but they're locked in. There seems to be no way out for them. The wood of the doors is too heavy. The bars of the gate don't break, and stones underneath it make it impossible to dig under. Then the faintest warning comes from an ancient tree. A tree that when Summer tries to look at it, it's not there. It tells him to run on the other side on the Godswood, for there is a sentinel that will allow them to escape. As they run, they see what the voice meant. A tree pointing at the sky, so crooked that it would be so easy for a human to climb. They start climbing too, but it's hard. Summer slips and falls, and Bran wakes up in his bed screaming Summer's name, his shoulder hurting as if he'd fallen too. He realizes that Jojen's visions has come true. The sea has come to Winterfell, just not as he'd imagined it would. Bran feels helpless there in his bed all alone. Nobody would come, even if he screamed, because all the men left in Winterfell had to go with Sir Roderick to defend Torrhen's Square. A man gets inside the room, a man that Bran does not know, followed by Theon Greyjoy, who declares himself Prince of Winterfell and claims the whole north for King Balon Greyjoy. Before leaving him in his room waiting for someone to dress him, Theon suggests he do what he is told to keep his people safe as a good prince would. Maester Luwin tells Bran how it all happened. They swam the moat, climbed the walls with rope and hooks, killed Alebelly, who was patrolling the walls just like Jojen predicted. All that is left of Winterfell is brought to the Great Hall, where Theon sits on the high seat of the Starks. Little Rickon does not understand what's going on, nor senses the danger, whereas Bran does. Among those who are taken, they are to swear loyalty to Theon. Bran sees Osha and the prisoner Reek, who was captured when Roose Bolton's bastard son, Ramsay, was slain. Theon addresses Reek. "Do you always smell so bad, or did you just finish a pig?" "Haven't no one since they took me, my lord. Reek's me true name. I was in service of the bastard of the Dreadfort, till the Starks gave him an arrow in the back for a wedding gift." Theon found that amusing. "Who did he marry?" "The widow of Hornwood, my lord." "That crone. Was he blind? She has teats like empty wineskins, dry and withered." "It wasn't her teats he wed her for, my lord." The Iron Men slammed shut the tall doors at the foot of the hall. From the high seat, Bran could see about 20 of them. He probably left some guards on the gates and the armory. Even so, there couldn't be more than 30. Theon raised his hand for quiet. "You all know me." "Aye, we know you for a sack of steaming dung," shouted Mikken, before the bald man drove the butt of his spear into his gut, then smashed him across the face with the shaft. The smith stumbled to his knees and spat out a tooth. "Mikken, you be silent." Bran tried to sound stern and lordly, the way Robb did when he made a command, but his voice betrayed him, and the words came out in a shrill squeak. Yet Mikken ignores Bran's orders and continues to disrespect Theon. Theon's man cuts his throat, and Mikken drowns in his own blood, like Jojen said he would. Theon promises the people of Winterfell that he'll be to them a lord as good as Eddard Stark was, but he'll make them regret it if they ever betray him. The first people to swear loyalty to Theon are Reek and Osha. The latter hurts Bran, who thought of her as a friend. "Stark's lords will fight you," the man Reek called out. "That bloated pig at White Harbour for one, and them Umbers and Karstarks too. You'll need men. Free me, and I'm yours." Theon weighed him for a moment. "You're cleverer than you smell, but I could not suffer that stench." "Well," said Reek, "I could wash some if I was free." "A man of rare good sense," Theon smiled. "Bend the knee." One of the Iron Men handed Reek a sword, and he laid it at Theon's feet and swore obedience to House Greyjoy and King Balon. Bran could not look. The green dream was coming true. "My Lord Greyjoy," Osha stepped past Mikken's body. "I was brought here captive too. You were there the day I was taken." "I thought you were a friend," Bran thought, hurt. "I need fighters," Theon declared, "not kitchen sluts. It was Robb Stark who put me in the kitchens. For the best part of a year, I've been left to scour kettles, scrape grease, and warm the straw for this one." She threw a look at Gage. I've had a bellyful of it. Put a spear in my hand again. I got a spear for you right here, said the bold man who killed Mikken. He grabbed his crotch, grinning. Osha drove her bony knee up between his legs. You keep that soft pink thing. She wrestled the spear from him and used the butt to knock him off his feet. I'll have me the wood and iron. So the castle yields and Bran is left with nothing but a bitter taste in his mouth. So, Season 2 of the show really should have introduced Ramsay here, since it makes his relationship with Theon so much more fascinating, with Ramsay being at Theon's mercy for most of A Clash of Kings, only for their relationship to completely flip when the Bolton sees Winterfell and Theon becomes Ramsay's prisoner. Having Ramsay also be the devil whispering into Theon's ear would have been better than the show's Dagmere Cleftjaw equivalent. Chapter 47, In the Kitchen of Harrenhal. Arya is trying to convince Hot Pie to get a tart. Hot Pie refuses because they are for Sir Amory Lorch, whom he fears and Arya hates. That's why she proposes to spit on them. Spit cannot be tasted, and Sir Amory will never notice. They're discussing on how Arya is not even supposed to be there in the middle of the night, but the sound of a faraway horn catches her attention. Hot Pie didn't hear it, but Arya has learned to use her ears. She goes to see who it is, and steals a tart in the meantime. It's the Bloody Murmurs, returned with a great number of prisoners. Arya counts 100, recognizes many banners of houses loyal to Robb, the Twin Towers of Frey, the White Sun of Karstark, the battle axe for Serwyn, and Baggo Hoat announces that among the captives are Robert Glover and Aenys Frey. Sir Amory Lorch sends them in the prison in the Widow's Tower. Arya looks for Gendry in the forges and asks for his help to set free the Northmen. In the garrison there are just 100 men, and by freeing them they could seize the castle and head to Winterfell, where her family would show Gendry a great deal of gratitude. But Gendry disagrees. He has the opportunity to become a forge master there, and making swords for this or that house doesn't really make a difference to him at all. But he'll get the chance only if he doesn't mess around. Arya leaves him, infuriated, going to the Godswood. Every time she has a spare hour, she hides in there, when nobody bothers her, and she has the time to practice what Syrio has taught her. She uses a stick as a sword, and in her imagination, the leaves turn into the Queen, the Hound, every person on her list, and Arya slashes at each of them. She then prays to the old gods to help set the Northmen free. But when she remembers that her father Eddard Stark used to pray to the gods too, and they didn't help him, she says out loud she doesn't care about their help, and does not even believe them capable of any help. A voice suddenly rises from the dark, stating that gods are not to be mocked. It's Jaqen. Arya lowered the splintery point towards the ground. How did you know I was here? A man sees, a man hears, a man knows. She regarded him suspiciously. Had the gods sent him? How do you make the dog kill Whis? Did you call Rorge and bite her up from hell? Is Jaqen H'ghar your true name? Some men have many names. Weasel, Ari, Arya. She backed away from him until she was pressed against the heart tree. Did Gendry tell? A man knows, he says again. My Lady of Stark. Maybe the gods had sent him in answer to her prayers. I need you to help me get those men out of the dungeons. That Glover and those others, all of them. We have to kill the guards and open the cell somehow. A girl forgets, he said quietly. 2 she has had. 3 were owed. If a guard must die, she needs only speak his name. But one guard won't be enough. We need to kill them all to open the cell. Arya bit her lip hard to stop from crying. I want you to save the Northmen, like I saved you. He looked down at her pitilessly. 3 lives were snatched from a god. 3 lives must be repaid. The gods are not mocked. His voice was silk and steel. I never mocked, she thought for a moment. The name. Can I name anyone, and you'll kill him? Jaqen H'ghar inclined his head. A man has said. Anyone, she repeated. A man, a woman, a little baby, or Lord Tywin, or the High Septon, or your father. A man's sire is long dead. But did he live, and did you know his name, he would die at your command. Swear it, Arya said. Swear it by the gods, by all the gods of sea and air, and even him of fire. I swear it. He placed a hand in the mouth of the weirwood. By the 7 new gods and the old gods beyond count, I swear it. He has sworn. Even if I named the king, speak the name and death will come. On the morrow, at the turn of the moon, a year from this day, it will come. A man does not fly like a bird, but one foot moves and then another, and one day a man is there, and the king dies. He knelt beside her, so they were face to face. A girl whispers if she fears to speak aloud. Whisper it now. Is it Joffrey? Arya put her lips to his ear. It's Jaqen H'ghar. Arya had never seen Jaqen as scared, yet a knife appeared in his hands. He calls her an evil child, and tells her that she'll cry because she'll lose a friend. Arya says that she'd never kill a friend, and that a friend would help her. What she means is clear to Jaqen, who starts working on a plan immediately. Arya takes back his name, but she must obey him, he tells her. Then he sends her to the kitchens with the order to prepare broth. Arya does as he says, but she's horrified when Rorge and Baita join the plan, taking the broth to the prisoners. Together they reach the Widow's Tower, where the prisoners are kept. The 8 men guarding them think it's their meal, but Roger, Baitan, and Jaqen throw their cups at their faces, leaving them no time to get their blades out, but one. Jaqen slashes him and tells Arya that's blood that she spilt. When Robert Glover asks them if they are brave companions, Roge replies that they are now. Robert Glover asks if this is Vargo Hoat's idea, which confuses Arya. Jaqen explains to her that a goat has no loyalty and that soon the Stark banner will fly on Harrenhal's walls. Arya then asks if she can still have a death, to which Jaqen replies she's had more than what she was owed. They agree that the debt has been paid, but that makes Arya sad because she feels like a mouse again. A god has his due, and now a man must die. A strange smile touched the lips of Jaqen H'ghar. Die? She said, confused. What did he mean? But I unsaid the name. You don't need to die now. I do. My time is done. Jaqen passed a hand down his face from forehead to chin, and where it went, he changed. His cheeks grew fuller, his eyes closer, his nose hooked. A scar appeared on his right cheek where no scar had been before. And when he shook his head, his long straight hair, half red and half white, dissolved away to reveal a cap of tight black curls. Arya's mouth hung open. "Who are you?" she whispered, too astonished to be afraid. "How did you do that? Was it hard?" He grinned, revealing a shiny gold tooth. "No harder than taking a new name, if you know the way." "Show me," she blurted. "I want to do it too. If you would learn, you must come with me." Arya grew hesitant. "Where?" "Far and away, across the narrow sea." "I can't. I have to go home, to Winterfell." "Then we must part," he said, "for I have duties too." He lifted her hand and pressed a small coin into her palm. "Here." "What is it?" "A coin of great value." Arya bit it. It was so hard it could only be iron. "Is it worth enough to buy a horse?" "It is not meant for the buying of horses." "Then what good is it?" "As well ask, what good is life? What good is death? If the day comes when you would find me again, give that coin to any man from Braavos, and say these words to him. Vala Magoris." "Vala Magoris," Arya repeated. Then the faceless man says that Jaqen is as dead as Arya, and disappears into the night. The next day, a pale lord comes forth to claim Harrenhal. Vargo Hoat gives the castle to Lord Roose Bolton. She is exposed to him as the weasel who made the soup that helped the Northmen, and Lord Bolton asks for her real name. Arya thinks about all the identities she has had, and chooses the name that seems fit for what she needs. Nymeria. Nan for short. One to be brave, one to feel home. Lord Bolton asks her if she's afraid of leeches. She's not, and Bolton is pleased with that. He orders to make her presentable, for she shall be his cupbearer. Arya knows better than to say she'd rather serve in the stables, and that night, watching Sir Amory Lorch being thrown naked into the bear pit, she does not spill one single drop of wine for Lord Bolton. So, in this chapter, we actually see Robert Glover, who is there when Davos secretly negotiates with Wyman Manderley under the Frasers' noses to support Stannis in return for making Rickon Lord of Winterfell, and Aenys Frey, who is one of the Frey's more competent battle commanders at Winterfell, for the battle with Stannis Baratheon, but he is thrown from his horse and dies before the battle can begin, meaning the Freys will be led instead by the rash, bull-headed Hosteen Frey. We also finally get to see Arya become a cupbearer at Harrenhal. In the show, they had Jaqen help Arya, Gendry, and Hot Pie escape, but instead, it was just to help free the Northmen who were already let in by Vargo Hoat to betray Armory Lorch and take over the castle from the Lannisters anyway. Vargo Hoat probably betrayed Tywin since he heard of his defeat to Edmure, but there is a cool conspiracy that the brave companions are working for the Dornish and were the sellsword company that Oberyn served under while in exile. Chapter 48. It is finally time for Daenerys to meet the Undying. But outside of their decadent house, a jarring contrast with the splendor of Qarth, Jogo, Aggo, Ser Jorah Mormont, and Xaro Daxus beg her to rethink her intentions, or at least not to get inside on her own. Daenerys replies that some paths are to be taken alone, but brings Drogon with her, following Pyre Pri into the House of the Undying. Dani notices that it's a building completely different from any other she saw in Qarth. It's long, without towers, decadent, it stretches like a snake in the city, and the black trees that produce the shape of the evening drink sunlight, making the path darker than she would have expected. Pyre Pri warns her, "The front way leads in, but never out again. Heed my words, my queen. The House of the Undying Ones was not made for mortal men. If you value your soul, take care and do just as I tell you." "I will do as you say," Dani promised. "When you enter, you will find yourself in a room with 4 doors, the one you have come through and 3 others. Take the door to your right. Each time, the door to your right. If you should come upon a stairwell, climb. Never go down, and never take any door but the first door to your right." "The door to my right," Dani repeated. "I understand. And when I leave, the opposite?" "By no means," Pyre Pri said. "Leaving and coming, it is the same. Always up, always the door to your right. Other doors may open to you. Within you will see many things that disturb you. Visions of loveliness and visions of horror. Wonders and terrors. Sights and sounds of days gone by and days to come and days that never were. Dwellers and servitors may speak to you as you go. Answer or ignore them as you choose, but enter no room until you reach the audience chamber." "I understand. When you come to the chamber of the Undying, be patient. Our little lives are no more than a flicker of a moth's wing to them. Listen well and write each word upon your heart." A dwarf offers Dani a flute of shade of the evening, which will open her ears and heart to the truths she will witness. At first, the drink tastes foul and disgusting, but in her mouth takes life in a myriad of wonderful flavors, from melted gold to mother's milk to red meat to her late husband's seed. Every taste that she has ever known and more. Dani then walks through the doors, through rooms of different sizes and shapes, and always taking the door to her right. She tries not to look inside the doors that are open, but curiosity is too strong to resist. She sees a beautiful woman being forced upon by 4 dwarfs, then a feast of corpses. Some are missing their heads, all are holding forks and knives and wine cups. Blood is congealing in pools. Above them sits a king, a man with a wolf head wearing an iron crown, a lamb in his hand like a scepter. His eyes in pain follow her. Then she's walking in a room she knows. It's the house with the red door in Braavos, the house with the lemon tree. In the room stands old Sir Willem Darry, who invites her to stay there with him. Dani wants so badly to be with him, more than anything in the world, but then remembers that the old bear has long been dead and runs away. She sees Aerys Targaryen, though she doesn't realize that this person is her father, in his throne telling to someone, "Let him be the king over charred bones and cooked meat. Let him be the king of the ashes." Then there's Rhaegar in front of her. He looks so much like Viserys, just taller, who's talking to a woman about the baby she's nursing. He tells her that his name is Aegon. He's the prince that was promised, and his is the song of ice and fire. Then he seems to be able to see Daenerys and says that there has to be another one because the dragon has 3 heads. Every door she's passing by is at her left. The only stairs in front of her go down. Whispers of something approaching haunt her, and Drogon and the torches are dying out. Daenerys is scared and at the last second realizes that the first door on the right is the last one to the left and immediately walks through the last door. The Pyat Pri awaits for her, trying to take her with him, and Dany climbs the stairwell, leaving him behind. His face turned into something worm-like. She praised the warrior for courage and the Dothraki horse for strength, and walks into another room, where the Undying, splendidly dressed, wait for her. They tell her that they've been waiting for her for 1,000 years, and that they can teach her the secrets of dragon speech. But Dany distrusts their voices as soft as honey and walks through the door to her right, in a room dark with gloom. There is a table with a floating heart above it, blue and rotten and consumed. Blue shadows sit around the table, not speaking or breathing or moving. They are rotting too, and they are the real Undying. Mother of dragons, came a voice, part whisper and part moan. Dragons, dragons, dragons. Other voices echoed in the gloom. Some were male and some female. One spoke with the timbre of a child. The floating heart pulsed from dimness to darkness. It was hard to summon the will to speak, to recall the words she had practiced so diligently. I am Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, Queen of the 7 Kingdoms of Westeros. Do they hear me? Why don't they move? She sat, folding her hands in her lap. Grant me your counsel, and speak to me with the wisdom of those who have conquered death. We live, it sounded, and know, whispered echoes. I have come for the gift of truth, Dany said. In the long hall, the things I saw, were they true visions or lies? Past things or things to come? What did they mean? The shape of shadows, morrows not yet made. Drink from the cup of ice, drink from the cup of fire. Mother of dragons, child of 3. 3, she did not understand. 3 heads has the dragon. The ghost chorus yammered inside her skull, with never a lip moving, never a breath stirring the still blue air. Mother of dragons, child of storm. The whispers became a swirling song. 3 fires must you light, one for life and one for death, and one to love. Her own heart was beating in unison to the one that floated before her, blue and corrupt. 3 mounts must you ride, one to bed, and one to dread, and one to love. The voices were growing louder, she realized, and it seemed her heart was slowing, and even her breath. 3 treasons will you know, once for blood, and once for gold, and once for love. I don't, her voice was no more than a whisper, almost as faint as theirs. What was happening to her? I don't understand, she said, more loudly. Why was it so hard to talk here? Help me. Show me. Help her, the whispers mocked. Show her. Visions float faster and faster in her head. Viserys in a pool of melted gold, a tall lord with copper skin and silver hair riding and bearing a banner with a fiery stallion. Rubies falling down from the armor of a dying prince, whispering a woman's name with his last breath. A king with blue eyes and a fire sword casting no shadows. A crowd cheering for a cloth dragon. Her silver horse, a white lion running in a field of grass taller than a man. A rotten corpse on the prow of a ship, smiling sadly. A blue flower growing from a wall of ice, filling the air with sweetness. She then sees shadows dancing in a tent. A little girl running barefoot in a house with a red door. Miri Mazdur burning in the flames, and a dragon be born. Naked crown emerging from a pool beneath the mother of mountains, kneeling before her. Then 10,000 slaves calling her mother, needing her, and Dany opens her arms for them, gives herself to them. But visions turn into a nightmare as it becomes harder to breathe. The Undying clinging to her to devour her. She can't move, and she's scared. Then the air turns red, and Drogon's breathing fire, burning her captives and setting her free. They run away together. Pyat Pri tries to stab her with a knife as she flees, but she's saved by Jogo's whip and ends up in the safe arms of Jorah Mormont. When she looks behind, the House of the Undying is burning to the ground. So, the House of the Undying is way more creepier and unsettling in the books than compared to the show. They seem to be an immortal hive mind being that wants to absorb Daenerys, kind of like how the werewood net wants to absorb Bran Stark. However, Daenerys rejects this absorption and seemingly destroys the House of the Undying. However, the visions Daenerys sees are numerous and complex, so here is our best go at explaining them all. The grotesque scene of carnage amidst a feast with a lifeless man who has the head of a wolf, adorned with an iron crown, obviously depicts Robb Stark and the Red Wedding. Willem Darry gesturing for Daenerys to enter the house with the red door from her childhood might be a hint of Daenerys' past or part of her false memories of her time in Braavos. Next is the grand hall adorned with dragon skulls, and a man saying, "Let him be the king of ashes," is obviously Aerys Targaryen issuing the order to incinerate King's Landing during Tywin's sack. Daenerys also sees Rhaegar, who resembles her brother Viserys, but taller and with darker purple eyes, with Elia Martell cradling a newborn named Aegon. Rhaegar proclaims him the prince that was promised, but says the dragon has 3 heads, alluding that he will need a 3rd child. Pyat Pree beckoning Daenerys into a garden, signaling the end of her journey. This is a deceptive illusion meant to distract Daenerys from her true path within the House of the Undying. Now, in the Undying Chamber, or the Inner Sanctum with the Blue Heart, Daenerys gets these visions. 3 fires must you light, 1 for life, and 1 for death, and 1 to love. These 3 fires are super vague, but one is definitely Drogo's funeral pyre, and the other 2 might be the burning of Astapor, or burning Vaes Dothrak in the Winds of Winter, or even burning King's Landing. 3 mounts must you ride, 1 to bed, and 1 to dread, and 1 to love. The first mount must be Drogo. The 1 to dread might be Hizdahr or Daario, and the 1 to love could be anyone. 3 treasons you will know, once for blood, and once for gold, and once for love. The treason for blood is Mirri Maz Duur. The reason for gold might be Jorah, and even Daenerys is often confused about this treason. The final treason could be anyone, but we like to think it will be Barristan Selmy or Tyrion. The vision of a tall lord with copper skin and silver hair is Rhaego, her son by Drogo, who died fulfilling his stallion who mounts the world prophecy. The next vision is Rhaegar, dying at the trident and whispering Lyanna before dying. Next, a glowing red sword in the hand of a blue-eyed king that casts no shadow, a cloth dragon swaying on poles amongst a cheering crowd, a stone beast taking wing from a tower as it breathes shadow fire. Slayer of Lies. The blue-eyed king is Stannis Baratheon. The cloth dragon is Aegon Targaryen, who we are introduced to in A Dance with Dragons, since he is a Blackfyre. The stone beast taking wing from the tower is an event that has not clearly occurred at this point in the story, although it most directly matches to Melisandre's belief that a stone dragon will awaken when Azor Ahai is reborn. These visions accompany the label Slayer of Lies, so maybe Daenerys will prove the 3 people in these visions to be liars. Stannis about killing Renly, Aegon about being a real Targaryen, and the Azor Ahai prophecy or something. The vision of Dany's horse trotting towards a stream at night, a corpse on the prow of a ship, grey lips smiling sadly, and a blue rose in a wall of ice accompanied by the words, Bride of Death, suggest all 3 of Daenerys' husbands will die. The corpse on the ship is Victarion Greyjoy sailing to Meereen. The blue rose is Jon Snow, maybe letting the wildlings pass the wall, and a reference to Lyanna Stark. The vision of a corpse dragged behind a silver horse is either the wine cellar or the pale mare coming to Meereen. The white lion running through the tall grass might be Jaime or Tyrion, but who knows? A line of naked crones emerging from a lake beneath the Mother of Mountains and bowing to her is probably Daenerys becoming the leader of all the Dothraki in the Winds of Winter. And lastly, the thousands of slaves shouting Mother as Daenerys rides past on her horse is when Dany frees the slaves of Yunkai. We might have made some mistakes, but that's our best analysis of the visions. Chapter 49. Tyrion is instructing his remaining clansmen on how to engage in fighting with Stannis. No battle, only night attacks to their baggage trains and camps. Ambush their scouts and hang the bodies to the tree. They must attack at night, every night, suddenly, to make them even afraid to go to sleep. The clansmen must listen to the guides he's providing them, because they know these woods better than anyone, and they'll serve them well. Shagga promises he'll listen and leads the Stone Crows away. 2 days prior, it was Timett with the burnt men to leave for the Kingswood, and they left before the Blackears and the Moon Brothers. Tyrion feels naked and exposed without his clansmen to protect him, but he needs them to slow Stannis down before the upcoming battle. His sellswords hired by Bronn will protect him, but he knows that they'd kill for the prizes he promised them, a land and a title for the best men, but they would not die for him. Tyrion can feel Stannis approaching day after day. Many issues trouble his mind, the City Watch among those. Of the 6,000 men, only a quarter are trustworthy, the other being young and unreliable. Tyrion can only hope that what his father says is true, that 1 man on the walls is worth 10 underneath. Another great concern is the pile of shacks and piles of mismatched barracks that grow right outside the city, connecting the river directly to the city walls. The very thing that Tyrion is trying to avoid. He called Bronn to his side. "Assemble 100 men and burn everything you see here between the water's edge and the city walls." He waved his stubby fingers, taking in all the waterfront squalor. "I want nothing left standing. Do you understand?" The black-haired sellsword turned his head, considering the task. "Them as own all this won't like that much." "I never imagined they would. So be it. They'll have something else to curse the evil monkey demon for. Some may fight. See that they lose. What do we do with those that live here? Let them have a reasonable time to remove their property, and then move them out. Try not to kill any of them. They're not the enemy, and no more ours. Keep your men in line, damn it." He wishes he could make city walls twice as tall and 3 times as thick, even though it might not matter that much, he thinks. Storm's End first and Winterfell second have fallen despite their thick walls, but the fall of Winterfell doesn't make him as happy as he should be. He remembered Winterfell as he had last seen it, not as grotesquely huge as Harrenhal, nor as solid and impregnable to look at as Storm's End. Yet there had been a great strength in those stones, a sense that within those walls a man might feel safe. The news of the castle's fall had come as a wrenching shock. "The gods give with one hand and take with the other," he muttered under his breath when Varys told him. They had given the Starks Harrenhal and taken Winterfell, a dismal exchange. No doubt he should be rejoicing. Robb Stark would have to turn north now. If he could not defend his own home and hearth, he was no sort of king at all. It meant reprieve for the West, for House Lannister. And yet, Tyrion had only the vaguest memory of Theon Greyjoy from his time with the Starks. A callow youth, always smiling, skilled with a bow. It was hard to imagine him as Lord of Winterfell. The Lord of Winterfell would always be a Stark. It's great news for the Lannisters, but Tyrion remembers walking in the castle and in its Godswood, where he felt so out of place, yet so fascinated by it. That Godswood is in the north. He knows that, and he feels for the loss of a castle that a man might call home and feel safe in. Winterfell is nothing to you, he reminded himself. Be glad the place has fallen and look to your own walls. The business of watching the city walls and sending his clansmen into the Godswood made him run late for the investiture of 2 of the new Kingsguard meant to replace the slain Breston Greenfield and the craven Sir Boris Blount, who had yielded Tommen to Tyrion's men with such alacrity that it would have made old Barristan Selmy go crazy for the fury. The Kingsguard is supposed to die for the king and the royal family, whereas Sir Boris's actions led him to a cell in Rosby. The new knights are Sir Balon Swan, a well-born knight from the Marches, whose family hasn't taken a real side in the War of the Five Kings, and Sir Osmond Kettleback, a turncloak utterly dependent on Cersei for his advancement. At the same time, he's selling all of her secrets to Bronn, who, in return, tells Tyrion. The imp approves of the first choice and disapproves the second. After the ceremony, Tyrion lingers for a word with the High Septon, who's been put there on Tyrion's command. Tyrion wants the gods on his side too, so the High Septon must say that Stannis will burn the Great Sept of Baelor if he prevails. To the question asked by the pious men whether that affirmation is true or not, Tyrion replies it's true enough. Stannis burnt the Godswood in Storm's End to honor the Lord of Light, So why wouldn't he do the same to the Seven? When he comes back to Isola, the pyromancy Helen is waiting for him with updates on the wildfire production. They produced almost 13,000 jars of wildfire, and they found 300 of them under the dragon pit from the times of Aerys the Mad King. We have been working very hard, my Lord Hand. That would doubtless explain why you are making so much more of the substance than before. Smiling, Tyrion fixed the pyromancer with his mismatched stare. Though it does raise the question of why you did not begin working hard until now. Helen had the complexion of a mushroom, so it was hard to see how he could turn any paler. Yet, somehow he managed. We were, my Lord Hand. My brothers and I have been laboring day and night from the first. I assure you, it is only an ancient secret of our order. Very delicate, very troublesome. They seem to be working better than they were. Helene smiled weakly. You don't suppose there are any dragons about, do you? Not unless you found one under the dragon pit. Why? Oh, pardon. I was just remembering something old Wisdom Pollitter told me once when I was an acolyte. I'd asked him why so many of our spells seemed, well, not as effectual as the scrolls would have us believe. And he said it was because magic had begun to go out of the world the day the last dragon died. Sorry to disappoint you, but I've seen no dragons. I have noticed the King's Justice lurking about, however. Should any of these fruits you're selling me turn out to be filled with anything but wildfire, you will be seeing him as well. As the pyromancer leaves, the former Sir Jacelyn Bywater, now Lord, arrives and discusses of the plans concerning Tommen should the battle be lost. Which means he reveals nothing to Tyrion as instructed. The Hand of the King thinks that if he's captured instead of killed, it's better to be unaware of Joffrey's heir whereabouts. Lastly, it's Varys that comes at the door, bringing a list of traders, merchants, craftsmen who intend to seize the Old Gate. They intend to share victory with Stannis Baratheon. Therefore, they call themselves the Ertac Men, after the crowned stag. Among the conspirators, Tyrion recognizes the Maester Armorer Salarin. I suppose this means I won't be getting that terrifying helm with the demon horns, Tyrion complained as he scrolled the order for the man's arrest. So, again, this chapter hints at the return of dragons bringing magic back into the world. Also, Tyrion's decision to send his clansmen into the Kingswood will actually seal Stannis' defeat, as Garland tells Tyrion before Joffrey's death at the Purple Wedding, where a singer is talking about the Battle of the Blackwater, and Tyrion finishes his rhyme by saying, "And cut off poor Tyrion's nose," Tyrion finished. Lady Lynette, Garland Tyrell's beautiful wife, giggled. "Perhaps you should be a singer, my lord. You rhyme as well as this Galilean." "No, my lady," Sir Garland said. "My Lord of Lannister was made to do great deeds, but to not sing of them. But for his chain and his wildfire, the foe would have been across the river. And if Tyrion's wildlings had not slain most of Lord Stannis' scouts, we would never have been able to take him unawares." His words made Tyrion feel absurdly grateful. It is a real shame that Garland wasn't included in the TV show, since he would have brought a lot of valor to House Tyrell. Lastly, in George R.R. Martin's original outline, it was supposed to be Tyrion, not Theon, who seized and sacked Winterfell, thanks to his time there at the beginning of A Game of Thrones. Chapter 50. Theon wakes up in the middle of the night. Something is wrong, but he can't quite understand what. Kaya, his bedwarmer, is asleep next to him. The night is quiet and the sky so filled with stars he couldn't live long enough to count them. Then he realizes, if it's so quiet, what are the direwolves doing? When his guards tell him that they are gone, he orders to have everyone in Winterfell gathered in the yard. He tells himself to fight his anger and fear and to be as cold and deliberate as Eddard Stark. He realizes that the people gathered in the yard hate him and blame him for things he's not really responsible for, like the arring of a girl. He has tried to treat them fairly, Theon tells himself. He had the Arists whipped. One of them had been guarding the Hunter's Gate, Drennan, and now is dead alongside the other guard, Squint. Theon quickly realizes by their wounds that it was the direwolves, but Drennan also has knife wounds, which must have been inflicted by Osha. Theon tells himself he should have killed the wolves the day he got the castle. The people assembled in the yard all look guilty to his eyes, and when he asks who's missing, he gets his answer. both Bran and Rickon Stark, Jojen and Mira Reed, Hodor and Osha. Theon asks if they've taken the horses, but they're all in the stables. The news that they're on foot is the best news yet, so he announces he's going to hunt for them in the morning. Nobody from the castle intends to help him. Reek proposes to skin them. A man with skin has secrets, a skinless man, none. Theon states that there won't be any flaying in the north as long as he rules. He hopes that the people will understand that he's the only one protecting them from people like Reek. He takes Reek with them on the hunt as well as Maester Luwin, because he doesn't trust him alone in the castle, and Walder Frey volunteers too. 11 men and 2 dogs leave. Reek takes a washerwoman's sack with him, whose content Theon does not inquire. The hunting doesn't seem to go well. The traces go northeast, in the Wolfswood. Theon does not like this one bit, but tells himself that he'll find them before the day is over. Maester Luwin rides towards him begging to spare the lives of Bran and Rickon, Jojen and Mira and Hodor too. Theon agrees to spare all of them, if he can, but he will kill Osha because she broke her oath of fealty to him. They keep looking for the boys, but soon enough they realize that Osha might have played them. They find the remaining of an elk clearly butchered by wolves. Wex claps his hands together loudly. "What is it?" Theon said. The mute boy pointed. The ground near the water was sodden and muddy. The tracks the wolves had left were plain enough. Paw prints, yes? So? Wex drove his heel into the mud and pivoted his boot this way and that. It left a deep gouge. Joseph understood. "A man the size of Hodor ought to have left a deep print in this mud," he said. "More so with the weight of a boy on his back. Yet the only boot prints here are our own. See for yourself." Appalled, Theon saw it was true. The wolves had gone into the turgid brown water alone. Osha must have turned aside before the elk, most likely. She sent the wolves on by themselves, hoping we'd chase after them. He rounded on his huntsman. "If you two have played me false..." "There's been only one trail, my lord, I swear it," said Graeus defensively, "and the direwolves would never have parted from them boys, not for long." That's so, Theon thought. Summer and Shaggy Dog might have gone off to hunt, but soon or late they would return to Bran and Rickon. "Garrus, Birch, take 4 dogs and double back. Find where we lost them. Agar, you watch them. I'll have no trickery. Farlan and I will follow the direwolves. Give a blast on the horn when you pick up the trail. 2 blasts if you catch sight of the beasts themselves. Once we find where they went, they'll lead us back to their masters." Theon takes Wex, the Frey boy, and Gyna Rednose to search upstream. No one finds anything. Walder Frey states that's because the Kragenmen, frog eaters as he calls them, don't smell like real men and can hide and go unnoticed even to the dogs. Theon is about to dismiss him, but Maester Luwin confirms that the Kragenmen used to be close to the Children of the Forest, and it could be possible that they have secret knowledge. When the day begins to turn into night, Theon knows that he won't find them. Then Reek approaches him. "My lord prince," Reek urged, his horse near. "Might be them Starks never came this way. If I was them, I would have gone north, and east maybe, to the Umbers. Good Stark men they are. But their lands are a long way. The boys will shelter someplace nearer. Might be I know where." Theon looked at him suspiciously. "Tell me." "You know that old mill, sitting lonely on the Acorn Water? We stopped there when I was being dragged to Winterfell, a captive. The miller's wife sold us hay for our horses while that old knight clucked over her brats. Might be the Starks are hiding there." Theon knew the mill. He had even tumbled the miller's wife a time or 2. There was nothing special about it, or her. Why there? There are a dozen villages, and Holdfast just as close. Amusement shone in those pale eyes. Why? Now that's past knowing, but they're there, I have a feeling. He was growing sick of the man's sly answers. His lips looked like 2 worms effing. "What are you saying? If you've kept some knowledge from me..." "My lord prince?" Reek dismounted and beckoned Theon to do the same. When they were both afoot, he pulled open the cloth sack he'd fetched from Winterfell. "Have a look here." In the sack, Theon finds 2 Stark brooches, and he understands what Reek is suggesting. He sends most of his men away, stating that now that he knows where they're hiding, and he won't have further use for the dogs. Maester Luwin begs once again to remember his promise of mercy. but Theon states that mercy was for the morning, when they hadn't made him mad yet. There is an awful theory that the Miller boys are Theon's children. The evidence for this comes when Ramsay suggests searching the mill for the Stark boys, and Theon thinks to himself, Theon knew the mill. He had even tumbled the miller's wife a time or two. Theon was a ward of the Starks for 10 years. The Miller boys are roughly the same age as Bran and Rickon in the books, which is 7 and 3 years of age, meaning timeline-wise it is possible, and is so twisted the idea of Theon murdering and flaying his own 2 sons without realizing it. Next, how did Ramsay think this far ahead to bring a bag of flaying equipment and Stark clothes to dress the Miller boys in case they couldn't find the Stark children and needed an alternative course of action? Well, again, it is argued that like Theon coming up with the crazy plan to seize and hold Winterfell, Ramsay had been sent dreams too, which prompted him to be ready to flay the Miller boys and dress them in Stark clothes he brought with him. Chapter 51. Corran Halfsand Party notices wildlings watching high on the Skirling Pass. They can see their fire glimmering in the night, half a mile away and 200 steps up. They must climb to kill them, or they'll blow a horn to warn the other wildlings. They note that lighting a fire while being tasked with watching for enemies is stupid, but Corran simply says that up there a fire means life, as well as death, and now they must die. Stone Snake, the best climber, immediately volunteers. Jon adds his voice, so it's done. He'll have to leave the wolf behind with the rest of the rangers. Stone Snake and Jon immediately start the harsh climb. Fear runs through Jon's blood as he keeps on going. The rocks are unforgiving. It's so dark he can barely see, and once his foot slips. But thanks to the gods, he doesn't fall. Stone Snake has taught him how to do it, and the technique is actually simple. The mountain is your mother, and you need to cling to its rocks like you'd cling to her breast. Jon recalls joking about the fact he'd never expect his mother to be a mountain, but now, with death so close, he can feel it. He doesn't find it funny anymore. When they reach the top, Jon realizes things are not going to go as planned. Fear is all that Jon can feel, knowing that he's looking at the men he's commanded to kill. There are 3 wildlings instead of the estimated 2. A ginger one is asleep, close to the flame. A second one is trying to feed the flames, and the third one wears the horn. That's the man that they target first, who bravely tries to blow the horn to warn the wildlings. Then it's the second one that Jon kills, and his blade is about to finish the last when Jon realizes it's a girl. He can't bring himself to kill her, so he offers her to yield, which she immediately accepts. Stone Snake is not happy with that, calling her a wildling and a watcher, and telling him that she would not spare him if the roles were reversed. Still, Jon takes her under his protection, unable to harm a woman. Jon asks for her name, to which she replies it's Ygritte. She reminded him of Arya. That's why he couldn't kill her. But now that he looks at her, Jon realizes that they're nothing alike, if not for the willfulness in their eyes. When Jon tells her his full name, she warns them that they should burn the dead or they'll come back for them. Stone Snake replies that they can't afford a fire and throws the bodies down the mountain, where shadow cats eat their remains. When questioned about her task, Ygritte reveals that they were supposed to watch out for the Night's Watch, and that a great number of free folk await them beyond the pass, not even knowing how many. Jon asks Ygritte if the 2 men killed were her kin, to which she replies they weren't more than Jon is. The answer upsets him, and she tells him the story of Beowulf the Bard, whose blood runs both in wildlings and Starks alike. The Stark in Winterfell wanted Beowulf's head, but never could take him, and the taste of failure galled him. One day, in his bitterness, he called Beowulf a craven who preyed only on the weak. When word of that got back, Beowulf vowed to teach the Lord a lesson, so he scaled the wall, skipped down the King's Road, and walked into Winterfell one winter's night with harp in hand, naming himself Sigrid of Skagos. Sigrid means deceiver in the old tongue that the first men spoke and the giants still speak. North or south, singers always find a ready welcome, so Beowulf ate at Lord Stark's own table and played for the Lord in his high seat until half the night was gone. the old songs he played and new ones he'd made himself. And he played and sang so well that when he was done, the Lord offered to let him name his own reward. "All I ask is a flower," Bael answered, "the fairest flower that blooms in the gardens of Winterfell." Now, as it happened, the winter roses had only then come into bloom, and no flower is so rare nor precious. So the Stark sent to his glass gardens and commanded that the most beautiful of the winter roses be plucked for the singer's payment. And so it was done. But when morning came, the singer had vanished, and so had Lord Brandon's maiden daughter. Her bed they found empty, but for the pale blue rose that Bael had left on the pillow where her head had lain. Jon tries to remember which Bran this is supposed to be, to which Ygritte replies, visibly annoyed, that it was Bran the Daughterless, but this does not really matter to the story. Lord Brandon had no other children. At his behest, the Black Crows flew forth from their castles in the hundreds, but nowhere could they find any sign of Bael or this maid. For most a year they searched, till the Lord lost heart and took to his bed, and it seemed as though the line of the Starks was at its end. But one night, as he lay waiting to die, Lord Brandon heard a child's cry. He followed the sound and found his daughter, back in her bedchamber, asleep with a babe at her breast. Bael had brought her back? No, they had been in Winterfell all the time, hiding with the dead beneath the castle. The maid loved Bael so dearly, she bore him a son, the song says. Though, if truth be told, all the maids loved Bael in them songs he wrote. Be that as it may, what's certain is that Bael left the child in payment for the rose he'd plucked unasked, and that the boy grew to be the next Lord Stark. So there it is. You have Bael's blood in you, same as me. It never happened, Jon said. She shrugged. Might be it did, might be it didn't. It is a good song though. My mother used to sing it to me. She was a woman too, Jon Snow, like yours. The story is not over yet. The song ends when they find the babe, but there is a darker end to the story. 30 years later, when Bael was king beyond the wall and led the free folk south, it was young Lord Stark who met with him at the frozen ford and killed him, for Bael would not harm his own son when they met sword to sword. So the son slew the father instead, said Jon. Aye, she said, but the gods hate kinslayers, even when they kill unknowing. When Lord Stark returned from the battle and his mother saw Bael's head upon his spear, she threw herself from a tower in her grief. Her son did not long outlive her. One of his lords peeled the skin off him and wore him for a cloak. Then Ygritte closes her eyes to sleep. The rest of the Rangers' party comes at dawn, and everyone compels Jon to kill Ygritte, even if she yielded. To prove this point, Corran Halfhand asks the wildling what would they do to him if he yielded, to which she replies without hesitation that it would just grant him a slower death. Corran commands Jon to kill her, but takes the Rangers away so that he can do it alone. It is not easy nor for Jon nor Ygritte. She tries to have her life spared by telling him that Mance Rayder would take him with them if he helped her. She could lead him through secret passages and his crow brother would never find out. Jon replies he's as much of a crow as they are. He knows what he has to do, but he doesn't know if he has the strength to do it. He wonders if she's afraid. Ygritte says that she was scared the night before, in the dark, but not now that there's a son. Lord Eddard Stark's bastard son holds his sword against her throat, cutting her skin, drawing blood. Ygritte shivers for the cold and urges him to get it over with. She can't be brave forever. Do it, she urged him after a moment. Bastard, do it. I can't stay brave forever. When the blow did not fall, she turned her head to look at him. Jon lowered his sword. Go, he muttered. Ygritte stared. Now, he said, before my wits return. Go. And she runs away. So, the story of Bael the Bard that Ygritte tells Jon has a lot of similarities with Rhaegar's supposed kidnapping of Lyanna. Firstly, Bael played the harp and was a talented musician, just like Rhaegar who could make Cersei weep. Both Lord Stark's daughter and Lyanna Stark are represented with a blue winter rose. Rhaegar even crowned Lyanna with a crown of blue roses, and Lyanna died in a room that had blue roses in it. Lord Stark goes in search of Bael and his daughter. just like Rickard and Brandon Stark do. But like in the story, they never find her because her and Bael are hiding, just like Lyanna and Rhaegar. The girl in this story also gives birth to Bael's son, who becomes Lord Stark, which might hint at the same fate for Jon Snow. Lastly, Mance Rayder knows this story, so when Jon sends him to serve fake Arya, he disguises himself as a bard and calls himself Abel, which is an anagram of Bael. Chapter 52. The air smells of ashes and the southern sky is darkened by the smoke of the fire in the Kingswood. A line of flames across the Blackwater Rush burns from horizon to horizon by the Hand's command, to slow down Stannis' arrival. At the sight, Sansa Stark can barely hold back tears, which lately have been coming even for trifles, without her being able to control them. But when Dontos asks her whether she's been crying, she denies, blaming the smoke for her wet eyes. Dontos reveals to Sansa that now that he's a fool, nobody pays him attention anymore, and even the Queen and the Hand speak freely in front of him. Varys pays him good gold for his information, and Dontos suspects that Moonboy has been reporting to the Spider for years. Sansa realizes he's drunk again and asks him whether it's true that Lord Stannis has burnt Storm's End Godswood to the ground. Dontos says that it's true and that Stannis did it to honor his new god, and that the Red Woman rules over him now, body and soul. He has also promised to destroy the Great Sept of Baelor. In a moment of rage, Sansa says that she wants to see it burnt to the ground. She used to love the Sept with the marbles and the crystal towers, thinking of it as the most beautiful building in the whole world. But that was before the execution of her father on its footsteps. Again, she begs Dontos to take her away from there, now that everyone is worried about Stannis and don't pay her any attention anymore. Dontos replies that it's not the right time yet, and when his friend will come back from his journey, he will grant them safe passage outside of the city. Now it's too guarded to even put a step outside. Sadly, Sansa has to agree on the last point and goes up to the roof, not wanting to go back to her rooms yet. The view is even more terrifying from there, so much so that she almost trips down the stairs, but the strong hand of the Hound saves her again. Sansa is surprised and frightened to see him there, too scared to even look at his face, even though she wasn't disgusted by it when he saved her from the mob, as the Hound bitterly points out. Sansa can't help but think that it's not the scars nor his mouth the worst part of his face. It's his eyes, so angry. She has never seen eyes like that before. "I should have come to you after," she said haltingly, "to thank you for saving me. You were so brave." "Brave?" His laugh was a half snarl. "A dog doesn't need courage to chase off rats. They had me 30 to 1, and not a man of them dared face me." She hated the way he talked, always so harsh and angry. "Does it give you joy to scare people?" "No, it gives me joy to kill people." His mouth twitched. "Wrinkle up your face all you like, but spare me this false piety. You were a High Lord's get. Don't tell me Lord Eddard Stark of Winterfell never killed a man. That was his duty. He never liked it." "Is that what he told you?" Clegane laughed again. "Your father lied. Killing is the sweetest thing there is." He drew his longsword. "Here's your truth. Your precious father found that out on Baelor's steps. Lord of Winterfell, Hand of the King, Warden of the North, the mighty Eddard Stark, of a line 8,000 years old. But Ilan Payne's blade went through his neck all the same, didn't it? Do you remember the dance he did when his head came off his shoulders?" Sansa hugged herself, suddenly cold. "Why are you always so hateful? I was thanking you, just as if I was one of those true knights you love so well. Yes. What do you think a knight is for, girl? You think it's all taking favors from ladies and looking fine in gold plate. Knights are for killing." He laid the edge of his longsword against her neck, just under her ear. Sansa could feel the sharpness of the steel. "I killed my first man at 12. I've lost count of how many I've killed since then. High lords with old names, fat rich men dressed in velvet, knights puffed up like bladders with their honors, yes, and the women and children too. They're all meat, and I'm the butcher. Let them have their lands and their gods and their gold. Let them have their sirs, Sandor Clegane spat at her feet to show what he thought of that. So long as I have this, he said, lifting the sword from her throat. There's no man on earth I need fear. No man on earth but his brother. But Sansa knows better than to say it aloud. He is a dog, just as he says. A half-wild, mean-tempered dog that bites any hand that tries to pet him, and yet will savage any man who tries to hurt his masters. Not even the men across the river? Clegane's eyes turned toward the distant fires. All this burning, he sheathed his sword. Only cowards fight with fire. Lord Stannis is no coward. He's not the man his brother was either. Robert never let a little thing like a river stop him. What will you do when he crosses? Fight, kill, die maybe. Aren't you afraid? The gods might send you down to some terrible hell for all the evil you've done. What evil? He laughed. What gods? The gods who made us all. All? He mocked. Tell me, little bird, what kind of god makes a monster like the imp, or a half-wit like Lady Tanda's daughter? If there are gods, they make sheep so wolves could eat mutton, and they make the weak for the strong to play with. True knights protect the weak, he snorted. There are no true knights, no more than there are gods. If you can't protect yourself, die and get out of the way of those who can. Sharp steel and strong arms rule this world. Don't ever believe any different. Sansa backed away from him. You're awful. I'm honest. It's the world that's awful. Now fly away, little bird. I'm sick of you peeping at me. Sansa leaves. That night, Sansa has a nightmare. She dreams of being assaulted by the mob again, but this time they get her and stab her until there's nothing but wet ribbons left of her. When she wakes up, for a terrible moment, she fears the dream has somehow turned into a reality when she feels sticky between her legs, but then she understands what this means. Her first blood screams to the world that she is a grown woman now, ready to be married and bedded. Fearing they're going to give her to Joffrey, Sansa washes her thighs so much that the water in the basin turns pink, cuts the bloodied fabric of the sheet, and even tries to burn the mattress in the fireplace. It takes 3 maids to pull her away, and while her servants come and go to make her presentable again, Sansa feels shame for what she has just done. Presented to the Queen, she lies, telling that what she did was for fear of the blood. Cersei is sure that Lady Catelyn has told her about its happening, to which Sansa replies that she expected it to be less messy and more magical. Cersei laughs at her innocence and replies that a woman's life is 9 parts mess to 1 magic, and the magic one turns out to be the messiest of all. It took her 1 day and a half to bring Joffrey to this world, her screams so loud that she thought Robert could hear her from the Kingswood. Sansa is shocked at the fact that his grace was not with her, to which Cersei replies that he always went hunting when her time was close, but she didn't even miss him, because she had her brother by her side. Joffrey won't show her any kind of devotion though. The Queen somehow tries to reassure Sansa, telling her that she may not love Joffrey, but she will love his children. I love his grace with all my heart, Sansa said. You had best learn some new lies, and quickly. Lord Stannis will not like that one, I promise you. The new High Septon said that the gods will never permit Lord Stannis to win, since Joffrey is the rightful king. A half-smile flickered across the Queen's face. Robert's true-born son and heir, though Joff would cry whenever Robert picked him up. His grace did not like that. His bastards had always gurgled at him happily and sucked his finger when he put it in their little base-born mouths. Robert wanted smiles and cheers, always, so he went where he found them, to his friends and his whores. Robert wanted to be loved. My brother Tyrion has the same disease. Do you want to be loved, Sansa? Everyone wants to be loved. The Queen disagrees though. She wants to share with Sansa a piece of womanly wisdom on her flowering day. Love is a poison, a sweet one, but it will kill her all the same. Even though Cersei is admonishing Sansa for being a foolish girl, she actually does give her some pretty good advice about motherhood and what to expect if she ever does become queen. Sansa also stands up to the Hound a bit in the chapter, which is something she never would have done before. Ultimately, I think this chapter was all about pragmatism and Sansa learning to see things the way they are, through Dantos relaying what is going on inside the Red Keep to her. The Hound calling her out for still believing in true knights. By the way, true knights is a phrase that Sansa stops using after this book, and Cersei's advice to her all contribute to Sansa learning how to play the Game of Thrones one day. Chapter 53. The Skirling Pass is shrouded in darkness, with the towering stone mountains blocking out the sun. The pathway is steep and narrow. In certain places, the pass is so tight that only one person could pass through at a time. Ghost is walking anxiously beside Jon, sensing a presence behind them. Jon instinctively draws his sword, Longclaw, just in case. Corran, the leader of the group, suggests that it's time to take a break until it gets dark. Corran Halfhand sits against a boulder, sharpening his longsword. Jon approaches him nervously. "My lord," he begins, "you never asked me how it went. With the girl." "I am no lord, Jon Snow," Corran says. "She told me Mance would take me if I ran with her." "She told you true. She even claimed we were kin. She told me a story." Jon has come to the realization that Corran and Mance were not just brothers, but also close friends, and now they have become bitter enemies. Why did he desert? For a wench, some say. For a crown, others would have it. He liked women, Mance did, and he was not a man whose knees bent easily. That's true. He loved the wild better than the wall. It was in his blood. He was wildling born, taken as a child when some raiders were put to the sword. When he left the Shadow Tower, he was only going home again, Corran replies. Was he a good ranger? Jon asks. He was the best of us, Halfhand answers, and the worst as well. Only fools like Thorin Smallwood despise the wildlings. They are as brave as we are, Jon, as strong, as quick, as clever. But they have no discipline. They name themselves the Free Folk, and each one thinks himself as good as a king and wiser than a maester. Mance was the same. He never learned how to obey. No more than me, said Jon quietly. Corran's shrewd grey eyes seemed to see right through him. So, you let her go? He did not sound the least surprised. You know? Now, tell me why you spared her. Corran squints disapprovingly at Jon. My father never used a headsman. He said he owed it to the men he killed to look into their eyes and hear their last words. And when I looked into Ygritte's eyes, Finding the right words proved to be a challenge. Jon gazed down at his hands, feeling utterly helpless. I know she was an enemy, but there was no evil in her. We took Ygritte's knife and axe. She's behind us, afoot, unarmed. And if I had slain her? Jon asks. Corran rises to his feet and smoothly sheaths his lengthy sword. She would be dead, and I would know you better than I had before. But enough talk, you ought to be sleeping. We have leagues to go and dangers to face. You will need your strength. Jon manages to find a sheltered spot. Ghost, Jon calls, here, to me. He finds solace in the presence of the white wolf by his side. However, Ghost simply glances at him before wandering off to hunt, leaving Jon behind. Whenever Jon shuts his eyes, visions of fierce direwolves run around in his dreams. 5 figures are present instead of the expected 6, and they are separated from each other. A deep feeling of emptiness washes over him. His siblings are somewhere out there, but he has lost their trail. He lets out a long, mournful howl that reverberates through the forest. Jon, a faint voice calls out to him. Red eyes are gazing at him. They are intense, yet hold a sense of joy upon seeing him. The ancient weirwood tree bears the face of his brother. Had his brother always possessed a third eye? Not always, the voice shouts out. Not before the crow. The wolf detects the scent of both wolf, tree, and a young boy. However, beneath those familiar scents is the unmistakable scent of death. Suddenly, he finds himself back amongst the towering mountains. It seems as though he has been transported back to Castle Black. However, it has become clear that what lies before him is a towering wall of ice, thousands of feet high. In the valley below, thousands of men are digging deep holes in the partially frozen ground, while others are engaged in military training exercises. a swarm of riders charge towards a shield wall. The clash of their mock battle create a melodic symphony of steel on steel. The campsite of this vast host lack any semblance of organization. The air is filled with the smells of hay, goats, sheep, horses, pigs, and an abundance of dogs. Wisps of dark smoke rise into the sky from a multitude of cook fires, adding to the lively atmosphere of the encampment. A sudden blast of chilly wind causes the hairs on his body to stand on end, and the atmosphere was filled with the exhilarating sound of flapping wings. Looking up towards the frosty peaks of the mountain, a dark silhouette suddenly descends from the sky. A piercing cry echoes through the air as he catches a glimpse of large blue-grey wings outstretched, blocking the sunlight. "Ghost!" Jon shouts. He can feel the talons and the pain. Eben grabs Jon. "Quiet. You mean to bring the wildlings down on us? What's wrong with you, boy?" "A dream," says Jon. "I was Ghost. I was on the edge of the mountain looking down on a frozen river, and something attacked me. A bird. An eagle, I think. There was a tree with my brother's face. The wildlings. There were thousands, more than I ever knew existed, and giants riding mammoths." Craster told the Lord Commander that the wildlings were gathering at the source of the milkwater. "That may be why you dreamed it. Or it may be that you saw what waits for us a few hours further on. Tell me," the half-hound says. Jon is feeling somewhat foolish discussing such matters with Corran and the other rangers, but he obeys nonetheless. Surprisingly, none of his fellow black brothers mock him for it. As he finishes speaking, even Squire Dalbridge's smile fades away. "Skin changer?" asks Eben grimly. Skin changers and wargs were creatures that Old Nan often spoke of in her tales. However, such fantastical beings could exist in his reality. Ghost has not shown up when they resume their journey. Jon fears that the eagle has harmed Ghost or caused him to fall off the cliff. He also thinks about the weirwood tree that bore his brother's face, emitting a scent of death and shadows. As dusk is descending upon the Skirling Pass, the temperature is dropping suddenly. The terrain is rugged with cracks, shattered boulders and piles of rocks scattered all around. Jon could not see any sign of Ghost, but he refrains from calling out for fear of attracting unwanted attention from other creatures lurking in the shadows. Finally, the eagle is sitting gracefully on a jagged rock ridge high above. Its silhouette is striking against the backdrop of the darkening sky. Jon notices a flash of white in between two boulders. It's Ghost. The sharp claws have left a trail of blood through the animal's fur and skin, yet the bird was unable to break Ghost's neck. Ghost is struggling to get up. The rangers work together to clean the dried blood from the direwolf's coat. As they tear a piece from Jon's cloak to bandage his wounds, night had fully descended. The only light in the sky is coming from a sprinkle of stars, barely distinguishing the darkness of the sky from the darkness of the surrounding stones. "Do we press on?" Stone Snake urges. "Back, not on," Corran commands. "Back?" Jon is surprised. "Eagles have sharper eyes than men. We are seen. So now we run," the half-hand admits. "Ghost, come," Jon calls. The direwolf is trailing behind. The wind intensifies, forcing them to dismount and proceed on foot in the darkness. Each man leads his horse, navigating through the strong gusts. Eben proposes the idea of using torches to help them navigate. Corran, however, tells them no fire. Before the crack of dawn, they pause to allow the horses to quench their thirst and nourish them. "We are not far from the place the wildlings died," Corran states. He looks at Squire Dalbridge. The squire is bowing his head. "Leave me as many arrows as you can spare, brothers." He stroked his longbow. "And see my Garren has an apple when you're home. He's earned it. Poor beastie." Jon realizes that Squire Dalbridge will die if he stays. As the sun rises, Jon gazes at the clear sky and notices a tiny dot drifting across the vast blue expanse. Eben has also caught sight of it and expresses his frustration, but Corran hushes him with a stern look. "Listen." Jon stands still, his breath caught in his chest as he listens intently. In the distance, a hunting horn is sounded, its echo reverberating against the towering mountains behind them. "And now they come," Corran says. There is a passage in this chapter that might be one of the most important in all of A Song of Ice and Fire, and that is when Jon finds the weirwood with his brother's face. Red eyes looked at him. Fierce eyes they were, yet glad to see him. The weirwood had his brother's face. Had his brother always had 3 eyes? Not always, came the silent shout. Not before the crow. He sniffed at the bark, smelled wolf, and tree, and boy, but behind that there were other scents. The rich brown smell of warm earth, and the hard grey smell of stone, and something else. Something terrible. Death, he knew. He was smelling death. He cringed back, his hair bristling, and bared his fangs. Don't be afraid. I like it in the dark. No one can see you, but you can see them. But first, you have to open your eyes. See? Like this. And the tree reached down and touched him. So this is almost certainly a time-traveling Bran using the weirwood net to change the past or communicate from the future like he did to Hodor. Now, why Bran did this though, we're not exactly sure. But it might have been Bran who wanted Jon to join the wildlings so he could let them through the wall once he becomes Lord Commander. But either way, whatever Bran's purpose was for speaking with Jon in this chapter, this passage is the clearest indication that all the events we are seeing in the books are the result of a time-traveling Bran. Also, the line of Bran saying, "I like it in the dark," and the smell of death might be Jojen and definitely hints at a darker Bran than what we got in the TV show or have seen in the books so far. Chapter 55. In the Grand Chamber of Riverrun, Catelyn Stark is seated opposite Brienne of Tarth. The two women found themselves in solitude, with no one else around. Catelyn is overcome with sorrow. "Brienne, I am no fit company. Go join the revels if you would." "I am not made for revels, my lady." "There was another bird this morning," Catelyn regrets saying. "Is it news of King's Landing?" Brienne asks. "My lady, what is it? Is it some news of your sons?" As Catelyn attempts to speak, her words become trapped in her throat, rendering her speechless. "I have no sons, but Robb." Bran and Rickon try to escape, but were taken at a mill on the Acorn Water. Theon Greyjoy has mounted their heads on the walls of Winterfell. Theon Greyjoy, who ate at my table since he was a boy of 10. "There are no words, my lady. My good lady. Your sons, they're with the gods now." "Are they?" Catelyn says sharply. "What god would let this happen? Rickon was only a baby. How could he deserve such a death? And Bran, when I left the north, he had not opened his eyes since his fall. I had to go before he woke. Now I can never return to him, or hear him laugh again." She shows Brienne her hands. "These scars. They sent a man to cut Bran's throat as he was laying. He would have died then, and me with him. But Bran's wolf tore out the man's throat. I suppose Theon killed the wolves too. He must have. I want them all dead, Brienne. Theon Greyjoy first, then Jaime Lannister, and Cersei, and the imp. Every one." Catelyn smiles sadly. "Robb will avenge his brothers." Catelyn leaves and visits Jaime Lannister's cell. She pushes open the large wooden door and enters into a thick darkness. Jaime lifts his hands to shield his face, the metal chains on his wrists making a clanking sound. "Lady Stark, I fear I am in no condition to receive you. You brought this on yourself. We granted you the comfort of a tower cell befitting your birth and station. You repaid us by trying to escape. A cell is a cell. Some under Castle Rock make this one seem a sunlit garden. One day perhaps I'll show them to you." If he is cowed, he hides it well, Catelyn thought. "A man chained hand and foot should keep a more courteous tongue in his mouth, sir. I did not come here to be threatened." "No? Then surely it was to have your pleasure of me. It's said that widows grow weary of their empty beds. We of the Kingsguard vow never to wed, but I suppose I could still service you if that's what you need. Pour us some of that wine and slip out of that gown, and we'll see if I'm up to it." Catelyn stared down at him in revulsion. Was there ever a man as beautiful or as vile as this one? "If you said that in my son's hearing, he would kill you for it." Only so long as I'm wearing these. Jaime Lannister rattled his chains at her. We both know the boy is afraid to face me in single combat. My son may be young, but if you take him for a fool, you are sadly mistaken. And it seems to me that you were not so quick to make challenges when you had an army at your back. Did the old kings of winter hide behind their mothers' skirts as well? I grow weary of this, sir. There are things I must know. Why should I tell you anything? To save your life. You think I fear death. That seemed to amuse him. You should. Your crimes have earned you a place of torment in the deepest of the 7 hells, if the gods are just. What gods are those, Lady Catelyn? The trees your husband prayed to? How well did they serve him when my sister took his head off? Jaime gave a chuckle. If there are gods, why is the world so full of pain and injustice? Because of men like you. There are no men like me. There's only me. Catelyn goes to leave, but Jaime apologizes and tells her, "Stay, and you shall have your answers. For a price." He has no shame. Captives do not set prices. Oh, you'll find mine modest enough. Your turnkey tells me nothing but vile lies, and he cannot even keep them straight. Answer my questions, and I'll answer yours. Truthfully. Oh, it's the truth you want. Be careful, my lady. Tyrion says that people often claim to hunger for truth, but seldom like the taste when it's served up. I am strong enough to hear anything you care to say. As you will then, but first, if you'd be so kind, the wine, my throat is raw. Your first question, Lady Catelyn. Not knowing how long this game might continue, Catelyn wasted no time. Are you Joffrey's father? You would never ask unless you knew the answer. I want it from your own lips. He shrugged. Joffrey is mine, as are the rest of Cersei's brood, I suppose. You admit to being your sister's lover. I've always loved my sister, and you owe me 2 answers. Do all my kin still live? Sir Stafford Lannister was slain at Oxcross, I am told. Jaime was unmoved. Uncle Dolt, my sister called him. It's Cersei and Tyrion who concern me, as well as my lord father. They live, all 3, but not long if the gods are good. Ask your next. Catelyn wondered if he would dare answer her next question with anything but a lie. How did my son Bran come to fall? I flung him from a window. Easy way he said it took her voice away for an instant. If I had a knife, I would kill him now, she thought, until she remembered the girls. Her throat constricted as she said, "You were a knight, sworn to defend the weak and innocent." He was weak enough, but perhaps not so innocent. He was spying on us. Bran would not spy. Then blame those precious gods of yours who brought the boy to our window and gave him a glimpse of something he was never meant to see. Blame the gods, she said, incredulous. Yours was the hand that threw him. You meant for him to die. His chains chinked softly. I seldom fling children from towers to improve their health. Yes, I meant for him to die. And when he did not, you knew your danger was worse than ever, so you gave your cat's paw a bag of silver to make certain Bran would never wake. Did I now? Jaime lifted his cup and took a long swallow. I won't deny we talked of it, but you were with the boy day and night. Your maester and Lord Eddard attended him frequently, and there were guards, even those damned direwolves. It would have required cutting my way through half of Winterfell. And why bother when the boy seemed like to die of his own accord? If you lie to me, this session is at an end. Catelyn held out her hands to show him her fingers and palms. The man who came to slit Bran's throat gave me these scars. You swear you had no part in sending him? On my honor as a Lannister. Your honor as a Lannister is worth less than this. She kicked over the waste pail. Jaime Lannister backed away from the spill as far as his chains would allow. I may indeed have shit for honor, I won't deny it, but I have never yet hired anyone to do my killing. Believe what you will, Lady Stark, but if I had wanted your Bran dead, I would have slain him myself. Gods be merciful, he's telling the truth. If you did not send the killer, your sister did. If so, I'd know. Cersei keeps no secrets from me. Then it was the imp. Tyrion is as innocent as your Bran. He wasn't climbing around outside of anyone's window, spying. Then why did the assassin have his dagger? What dagger was this? It was so long, she said, holding her hands apart. Plain, but finely made, with a blade of Valyrian steel and a dragon bone hilt. Your brother won it from Lord Baelish at the tourney on Prince Joffrey's name day. Jaime poured, drank, and stared into his wine cup. I seem to remember that dagger, now that you describe it. Won it, you say? How? Wagering on when you tilted against the Knight of Flowers. Yet, when she heard her own words, Catelyn knew she had gotten it wrong. No. Was it the other way? Tyrion always backed me in the lists, Jaime said. But that day, Sir Loras unhorsed me. A mischance. I took the boy too lightly. But no matter. Whatever my brother wagered, he lost. But that dagger did change hands. I recall it now. Robert showed it to me that night at the feast. His grace loved to salt my wounds, especially when drunk, and when he was not drunk. Tyrion Lannister had said much the same thing as they rode through the mountains of the moon, Catelyn remembered. She had refused to believe him. Peter had sworn otherwise. Peter, who had been almost a brother. Peter, who loved her. And yet, if Jaime and Tyrion told the same tale, what did that mean? The brothers had not seen each other since departing Winterfell more than a year ago. Are you trying to deceive me? Somewhere there was a trap here. I've admitted to shoving your precious urchin out a window. What would it gain me to lie about this knife? He tossed down another cup of wine. Believe what you will, I'm past caring what people say of me, and it's my turn. Have Robert's brothers taken the field? They have. Now, there's a niggardly response. Give me more than that, or your next answer will be as poor. Stannis marches against King's Landing, she said grudgingly. Renly is dead. Murdered at Bitterbridge by his brother through some black art I do not understand. A pity, Jaime said. I rather liked Renly, though Stannis is quite another tale. What side have the Tyrells taken? Renly at first. Now I could not say. Your boy must be feeling lonely. Robb was 16 a few days past, a man grown, and a king. He's won every battle he's fought. The last word we had from him, he had taken the crag from the Westerlings. He hasn't faced my father yet, has he? When he does, he'll defeat him, as he did you. He took me unawares, a craven's trick. You dare talk of tricks? Your brother Tyrion sent us cutthroats in envoy's garb under a peace banner. If it were one of your sons in this cell, wouldn't his brother do just as much for him? My son has no brothers, she thought. But she would not share her pain with a creature such as this. What's a brother's life when honor is at stake, eh? Another sip. Tyrion is clever enough to realize that your son will never consent to ransom me. Catelyn could not deny it. Robb's bannermen would sooner see you dead. Rickard Karstark in particular. You slew 2 of his sons in the Whispering Wood. The 2 with the white sunburst, were they? Jaime gave a shrug. If truth be told, it was your son that I was trying to slay. The others got in my way. I killed them in a fair fight, in the heat of battle. Any other knight would have done the same. How can you still count yourself a knight when you have forsaken every vow you ever swore? So many vows. They make you swear and swear. No matter what you do, you're forsaking one vow or the other. He took a healthy swallow of wine and closed his eyes for an instant, leaning his head back against the patch of nitre on the wall. I was the youngest man ever to wear the white cloak, and the youngest to betray all it stood for, Kingslayer. Kingslayer, he pronounced carefully. And such a king he was. He lifted his cup. To Aerys Targaryen, the second of his name, Lord of the 7 kingdoms and protector of the realm, and to the sword that opened his throat. Catelyn can tell Jaime is drunk now. Only a man like you would be proud of such an act. I told you, there are no men like me. Answer me this, Lady Stark. Did your Ned ever tell you the manner of his father's death, or his brother's? They strangled Brandon while his father watched, and then killed Lord Rickard as well. An ugly tale, and 16 years old. Why was he asking about it now? Killed, yes, but how? The cord, or the axe, I suppose. No doubt Ned wished to spare you. Well, you wanted the truth? Ask me. We made a bargain. I can deny nothing. Ask. Dead is dead. I do not want to know this. Brandon was different from his brother, wasn't he? He had blood in his veins instead of cold water. More like me. Brandon was nothing like you. If you say so. You and he were to wed. He was on his way to Riverrun when... Strange how telling it still made her throat grow tight after all these years. When he heard about Lyanna and went to King's Landing instead, it was a rash thing to do. She remembered how her own father had raged when the news had been brought to Riverrun. The gallant fool was what he called Brandon. He rode into the Red Keep with a few companions, shouting for Prince Rhaegar to come out and die. But Rhaegar wasn't there. Aerys sent his guards to arrest them, all for plotting his son's murder. The others were Lord's sons too, it seems to me. Aerys accused them of treason and summoned their fathers to court to answer the charge, with the sons as hostages. When they came, he had them murdered without trial, fathers and sons both. There were trials, of a sort. Lord Rickard demanded trial by combat, and the king granted the request. Stark armored himself as for battle, thinking to duel one of the Kingsguard. Me, perhaps. Instead, they took him to the throne room and suspended him from the rafters, while two of Aerys' pyromancers kindled a blaze beneath him. The king told him that fire was the champion of House Targaryen, so all Lord Rickard needed to do to prove himself innocent of treason was, well, not burn. When the fire was blazing, Brandon was brought in. His hands were chained behind his back, and around his neck was a wet leathern cord attached to a device the king had brought from Tyrosh. His legs were left free though, and his longsword was set down just beyond his reach. The pyromancers roasted Lord Rickard slowly, banking and fanning that fire carefully to get a nice even heat. His cloak caught first, and then his surcoat, and soon he wore nothing but metal and ashes. Next he would start to cook, Aerys promised, unless his son could free him. Brandon tried, but the more he struggled, the tighter the cord constricted around his throat. In the end, he strangled himself. As for Lord Rickard, the steel of his breastplate turned cherry red before the end, and his gold melted off his spurs and dripped down into the fire. I stood at the foot of the Iron Throne in my white armor and white cloak, filling my head with thoughts of Cersei. After, Gerald Hightower himself took me aside and said to me, "You swore a vow to guard the king, not to judge him." That was the White Bull, loyal to the end and a better man than me. All agree. Aerys. Catelyn could taste bile at the back of her throat. The story was so hideous she suspected it had to be true. Aerys was mad, the whole realm knew it. But if you would have me believe you slew him to avenge Brandon Stark, I make no such claim. The Starks were nothing to me. I will say, I think it's passing odd that I am loved by one for a kindness I never did, and reviled by so many for my finest act. At Robert's coronation, I was made to kneel at the royal feet beside Grand Maester Pycelle and Varys the eunuch, so that he might forgive us our crimes before he took us into his service. As for your Ned, he should have kissed the hand that slew Aerys, but he preferred to scorn the ass he found sitting on Robert's throne. I think Ned Stark loved Robert better than he ever loved his brother, or his father, or even you, my lady. He was never unfaithful to Robert, was he? Jaime gave a drunken laugh. Come, Lady Stark, don't you find all this terribly amusing? I find nothing about you amusing, Kingslayer. That name again. I don't think I'll F you after all. Littlefinger had you first, didn't he? I never eat off another man's plate. Besides, you're not half so lovely as my sister. His smile cut. I've never lain with any woman but Cersei. In my own way, I have been truer than your Ned ever was. Poor old dead Ned. So, who has shit for honor now, I ask you? What was the name of that bastard he fathered? Catelyn took a step backward. Brienne. No, that wasn't it. Jaime Lannister upended the flagon. Snow, that was the one. Such a white name. like the pretty cloaks they give us in the Kingsguard when we swear our pretty oaths. Brienne pushed open the door and stepped inside the cell. "You called, my lady? Give me your sword." Catelyn held out her hand. So, I don't normally quote entire sections from the book, but this is probably my favourite passage from A Clash of Kings, and I really like reading it because you learn so much about Jaime's relationships with Tyrion, Cersei, Robert, Aerys, Ned, Renly, Littlefinger, and himself. It's also fun to see Catelyn work everything out and come to realise what kind of person Jaime is. There aren't any real conspiracies, mysteries, or foreshadowing going on in this chapter. Just two people in a room telling the truth, which is why it is so much fun. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed watching, please like and subscribe. We'll be covering Game of Thrones Season 1 next, and then either Lord of the Rings, House of the Dragon Season 2, or A Clash of Kings Part 5. And when you get the chance, check out our Game of Thrones inspired Choose Your Own Adventure game here on YouTube by clicking the video link on the screen right now.